Chapter 1135. Guaranteed second update completed. The next update was to continue filling in the gaps. Before this journey, June Moxie had given each of them a heaven reversal pill to save their lives. But right now, they were stubbornly enduring the pain from their wounds. Every single one of them felt that these minor injuries were far from the time to use such a divine medicine. We can still hold on, it's not the time to use the divine medicine yet. Opposite them, the strange races that had always been known for their savagery all had looks of panic and fear in their eyes. This included Dekabu Shang, who had been watching from afar. Originally, Dekabu Shang had already tried his best to overestimate the strength of the Bear Tribe warriors, but he did not expect that his overestimation was actually still underestimating them. With a flap of his iron wings, the sky instantly darkened. Eagle King, who was the first to finish adjusting his breathing, landed in front of Bear Mountain with a swoosh. He gave Bear King a look. Eagle King's Xian cultivation was the most profound, far surpassing the ordinary eagle people. Naturally, he was the first to recover among the eagle people. Bear Mountain understood and asked, "What is it?" "You're still too hot-tempered." Eagle King Lengleng said, "The mission that Big Sister and brother-in-law gave us is to defend for as long as possible, to delay the strange race's advance as much as possible. You came up to face a random trash, and you actually want to disregard your own safety and fight with your life on the line? How many lives do you have to fight for? We can die, but even if we really have to die, we can only die after our reinforcements arrive. Before reinforcements arrive, we must not die. What we need to do now is to survive for as long as possible. Only by surviving can we stop the strange races from entering the Xian continent." Bear Mountain opened his mouth and finally lowered his head. "You're right, I was muddle-headed just now." This apology was a new page in history. This was Tian Fa's Bear King Bear Mountain's first serious apology in his life. Since we are going to fight a war of attrition and endurance, we have to be patient first. The Eagle King's eyes flickered as he said, "We still have the 8 great Saint Venerables behind us. Apart from our own people, the other party definitely won't know about this. This will be our strongest killing move and final trump card." Although there were many of them, the number of true experts was very limited. As long as we don't panic with our strength, we can definitely defend. "Yes." Bear Mountain was completely convinced. He grinned widely and said, "I'll listen to everything you say." "Hee, little eagle, you're really cunning. I couldn't tell before." "What do you mean I'm a traitor?" "You're the cunning one. This is called wisdom, don't you know?" The Eagle King rolled his eyes and looked at this fool speechlessly. "Did you notice? Through this battle, we've actually exposed a huge weakness of the mutated races. In other words, it's a weakness that we can exploit." "Weakness? Regret? Hurry up and tell me the details." Bear Mountain asked anxiously. "The ones fighting against the mutated races was your bear tribe, and the ones who reaped the greatest results were also your tribe. Now, as the Bear King, you actually didn't notice anything? Could it be that the brains of the bear tribe are really just muscles?" The Eagle King slapped his forehead and said, "The so-called regret is that the experts of the mutated races, those experts who know how to conceal themselves, are not suitable for chaotic battles." "HM? Those trash who know how to conceal themselves are not suitable for chaotic battles? That can't be right. Weren't our brothers injured by those experts? And the main reason for this one-sided massacre was because they retreated." Bear Mountain retorted. He really didn't notice this point. The Eagle King nodded and continued with a solemn face. "I'm not saying that their experts can't participate in chaotic battles, but that their concealment techniques are not suitable for chaotic battles." After thinking for a while, the Eagle King added, "More accurately, it should be the concealment techniques of these hell-enduring ghosts. In a large-scale chaotic battle, they will be more threatened." "What do you mean?" Bear Mountain blinked, feeling that he was already confused by the Eagle King's words. Just like this king, one-on-one battles and chaotic battles are basically the same. But I've never heard of any expert who is only strong in one-on-one battles, but not in a chaotic battle. What kind of logic is this? What are you talking about? You stupid bear. You stupid bear. Saying that your brain is filled with muscles is too light, you're just a rock. You can't even move a muscle. The Eagle King was so angry that he almost jumped up. Explaining things to such a stubborn person was really difficult. Thinking about this, the Eagle King was even more impressed by Jun Moxie. Why was it that every time brother-in-law spoke to him, he could understand it so clearly? I've been with this bear for hundreds of years, but I've never been able to be a clear-headed person. Turning around, he gritted his teeth and said, I was talking about their concealment techniques. Do you understand? You're the one with a brain full of muscles. Why don't I know you're talking about concealment techniques? But is there a connection? Bear Mountain was unusually dissatisfied. What you said just now was so confusing, without a single bit of logic. I've never heard that the invisibility spell can't be used in a chaotic battle. The great battle is right in front of us, and more enemies are gathering. Yet, you're here spouting nonsense. If you delay the battle, what should we do? Brother, little eagle, can you please use your brain a little more? If you really can't do it, you might as well retreat to the side and watch me kill the enemies. You actually dare to say that I'm delaying the battle? But I'm going to vomit blood. The Eagle King almost broke down and cursed. You're also the king of your tribe, can't your brain have something else other than paste? Did you not see the number of hell-enduring ghosts that died in your hands just now? Do you know what this means? Of course I know. Big Bear proudly said, this naturally means that the sons of my clan have made a great contribution. How could this king not know? Bullsh*T, who's talking to you about contributions? And, since you've already seen it, then why haven't you noticed anything strange? The Eagle King's eyes widened. My fourth brother. You're really my biological brother. Nonsense. Bear Mountain rolled his eyes. We're like brothers. Don't tell me you don't see me as your biological brother? If that's the case, you're really not right. I surrender, I completely surrender. The Eagle King looked like he wanted to cry. I'll be honest with you, please spare me. Bear Mountain was stunned. I'll tell you bit by bit. Look, among the 30 hell-enduring ghosts that died, most of them were genin. There's a small portion, which is about 4 or 5 of them, that's about the level of a middle ninja. According to my observation, the level of the middle ninja's Xian cultivation is at the level of a venerable. If not for them, I might not have been able to tell. But the venerable level experts of the continent, no matter how weak they are, shouldn't be killed by just a few slashes. But these strange races died in such a strange way. This is undoubtedly very unreasonable. The Eagle King's voice was urgent and fast. And the strange race that you fought just now, Xiachuan Pagua, is at most a middle ninja. Even if his level is slightly higher, it's definitely not that high. But he was able to cause you to be unable to advance or retreat, almost unable to retaliate. How impressive is that? And I understand now. The Bear King's eyes widened. You understand now? I'm not done yet. The Eagle King was a little stunned. Could it be that fourth brother had suddenly become smart? After all this time, you're just mocking me here. You think I can't take care of that bastard, so you're beating around the bush to ridicule me. You haven't experienced for yourself how difficult it is to deal with an invisible person. It's easy for you to say that. Fuck, if you have the ability, go ahead. The tone of Bear Mountain's voice became even more unfriendly. Big brother, what do you understand now? Stop messing around, listen to me first. Let me put it this way, among the people who died just now, there were at least 4 or 5 of them with that kind of cultivation. Do you believe that with the combined attacks of your men, 20 to 30 of them could be killed in the blink of an eye without any effort? And on our side, not a single one died. In fact, there weren't even any who had completely lost the ability to fight. You also know that those men under you can't possibly all be experts of the Holy Emperor, right? That's right. From what you've said, there's indeed something fishy about this. The Bear Mountain finally understood what was wrong. He furrowed his brows and thought hard. Then what exactly is the reason? Dear brother, don't think about it. By the time you think about it, who knows, the next war for seizing the heavens might have already begun. The Eagle King looked at the furrowed brows of Bear Mountain and pursed his lips. I'll tell you everything. These people, I dare to make a bold guess. Even those high-level strange races who can use the invisibility technique will have to pay a price to use it. This time, the Eagle King spoke word by word. And that price, I'm almost certain, is at the cost of sacrificing their own defense. In other words, the moment they use the invisibility technique, their own defensive Xian Qi will fall to the lowest point of their strength. Although they can completely hide themselves and confuse the enemy, and can also use their full strength to attack the enemy, the moment they receive a counterattack from the enemy, even if it's a coincidental counterattack, they will have to pay a considerable amount of damage. Especially when facing experts who are stronger than them, once they get hit, it will be a heavy injury. If they face the self-destruction of an expert, they will definitely pay with their life. But who would have thought that when we face the self-destruction of a weaker person, we can rely on our own Xian Qi and physique to not die? Chapter 1136. Yes. Something's definitely not right. With their standards, they shouldn't have died so easily. Bear Mountain rubbed his chin. At the Venerable Realm, although there's no chance of winning against the Holy Emperor, but at the very least, they shouldn't have died so easily. If they were that weak, the kid I fought with would have been finished long ago. Not to mention that most of them were accidentally struck, and it's because of these accidents that they're finished. Eagle King added. If that's the case, then these trash really aren't suited for group battles. At least they can't use that damned invisibility art to sneak up on others. Bear Mountain's eyes lit up. Against Sichuan Pagua just now, he could be said to have expended all his strength, but he was still unable to do anything to the other party. In fact, if not for Jun Emosie's warning, to think of defeat before thinking of victory, and to defend with all his might, he might not have been able to escape unscathed. If these enduring ghosts really weren't suited for group battles, or if they couldn't use that damned invisibility art in the midst of a chaotic battle, then the time they'd be able to win with their delaying tactics would definitely increase by several folds. Even so, we can't be blindly optimistic. While these trash aren't suited for group battles, if we want to kill or injure them in a group battle, we'll still have to rely on luck. Furthermore, as their numbers decrease, our chances of success will decrease. After all, we have no idea where these bastards are hiding. Eagle King's expression was solemn. Also, while I've noticed this, I still can't think of a way to exploit their weakness to the fullest. If only Big Sis or brother-in-law were here. When it comes to battlefield intelligence, they're the true experts. Just this bunch of people, are they worthy of Big Sis and brother-in-law personally taking action? Bear Mountain said disdainfully. If this annoying guy doesn't hide himself, I can take on 10 of them by myself. Eagle King pursed his lips, raising his head to the sky with his hands behind his back. He took it as Bear Mountain's fart. He has such a heaven-defying super skill, and he can use it to fight against the strong, but you're thinking of telling him not to use it? If it were you, would you not use it? Eagle King felt that if he were to stay with Bear King any longer, his intelligence would become limitless. He couldn't help but take a step away from this idiot. If his brain really became filled with rocks, muscles, and glue, that would be really fatal. As they discussed in secret, thinking about how to make use of this discovery, the outsiders were also whispering to each other. Both sides stared at each other covetously, but the battle unexpectedly fell into a temporary truce. It was undeniable that the Tian Fa Bear tribe's display of strength this time, as well as their lightning-like killing methods, had shocked all the strange races who had witnessed this massacre. 10,000 people. If they could be dissected from the middle, they would be 20,000 people with complete limbs and heads. Just like that, it turned into dust on the ground. Moreover, the entire process was witnessed by everyone. What kind of visual impact was this? Some of the conjoined female strange races had already started to vomit. Shangchuan Paku stared blankly at the swamp of flesh and blood in front of him. His originally ashen face had already turned pale. His eyes shone with indescribable hatred as well as fear. In the sudden eruption of the volcano, their tribe had suffered great losses. The experts of the strange races treasured their lives the most, and in the face of disaster, they only cared about running for their lives. As a result, The majority of the old, weak, sick, and crippled had all died under the attack of the falling rocks. And these 10,000 people before him could be said to be the final strength of the Shangchuan family, and also their most elite force. Otherwise, how could any one of them have the strength of a 9th-level ninja? But even with this kind of strength, in less than an incense's time, other than less than 50 hell-enduring ghosts who were still alive, the rest were all dead. From now on, the Shangchuan family could basically be declared dead. For these people, the best outcome was to become the vassals of other families. And in Shangchuan Paku's eyes, these 3,000-strong bear warriors had already become an indestructible, impassable steel wall. Shangchuan Paku absolutely believed that against such warriors, even if they gathered all the elite forces of the 10 nearby tribes to break through, even if they could break through in the end, they would have to pay an unimaginable price. At the back, Deku Shang's lips were trembling, and he felt his lips were dry, as though he was suffocating from thirst. He took a deep breath and slowly recovered. The idea of sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight was undoubtedly beautiful, but what if the two sides were a tiger and a cat? Or a group of tigers against a group of cats? Beside him, those enduring ghosts experts who had tried their best to persuade him to join forces with the Shangchuan family to break through also had their mouths wide open, looking ahead in disbelief. Their eyes were filled with fear and a trace of hope. Just now, luckily I didn't go up. Our family head is truly far-sighted, truly wise. Instantly, dozens of worshipful gazes locked onto Deku Shang. Being stared at like this, Deku Shang should have felt smug, but he only felt a chill in his heart and back. The Shangchuan family was already doomed, and this was indeed a good thing for him, but next, it was the task of the Deku family to face these ferocious bear warriors head-on. Could he resist them? Or rather, did he have the ability to defeat them, to open the first door to Xian, to charge through this bright path of light? The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. The oriole was undoubtedly the biggest winner, but what if the mantis was actually a robot mantis with shocking killing power? What would be the outcome of the oriole? Facing Bear Mountain's untamed and murderous gaze, Deku Shang felt regret for the first time. At this time, Bear Mountain and Eagle King had already finished their discussion, and they suddenly took a few large steps forward, glaring angrily. Strange race bastards, who else dares to come and fight? Grandpa, I didn't kill to my heart's content just now. His roar was earth-shattering, imposing to the extreme. It was as if the volcano not far away had also been shaken by his roar, erupting even more violently. One man can hold the pass against 10,000. The strength of one man can prop up the heavens and earth. At this moment, Big Bear's abnormally majestic body was standing there, and it could be said that he was the perfect embodiment of the above two sentences. Seeing the ferocity of their king, such a domineering hero, stimulated by his soaring battle intent, the 3,000 bear warriors suddenly felt the blood in their chests boiling. All of them took a step forward at the same time. 3,000 feet landed on the ground at the same time, creating a loud bang. Dust and smoke rose into the sky around the 3,000 people. The 3,000 people roared at the same time. Who else dares to come and fight? Grandpa, I still didn't kill to my heart's content. Among these 3,000 warriors, even the weakest had reached the level of a venerable. At this moment, they circulated their Xian Qi and roared at the same time. The heavens and earth shook, and the sun and moon lost their light. It was as if a group of ancient war gods had suddenly burrowed out of the ground, appearing between the heavens and earth. They opened their huge mouths, revealing their ferocious fangs. On the other side, following this roar, Shangchuan Paku and Deku Shang only felt a gust of dust rushing towards them. Their mouths and noses also felt suffocated. They couldn't help but take a step back. My heavens, after such a bloody massacre, they're still not satisfied? What kind of existences are they facing? Not only the patriarchs of the two clans, but all of the strange races, the tens of thousands of them, all took a few steps back. With a loud roar, tens of thousands of strange races retreated in unison. What kind of awe-inspiring might was this? Who in the world would dare to accept this? Just at this moment, the howling of the wind suddenly rang out, growing louder and louder. The people on both sides looked up in shock, only to see that the howling southwest wind had soundlessly changed its direction. It had turned into a northeast wind. The southwest wind was clearly still blowing wildly, but the more violent northeast wind was also becoming more and more ferocious. In the sky, two huge clouds, one in the south and one in the north, violently collided with each other under the impetus of their respective winds. An earth-shattering sound of thunder rang out, followed by fist-sized hailstones smashing down. The Eagle People warriors had already finished adjusting their breaths and stood in line behind the Bear People, standing quietly. With their cultivation, although the hailstones came suddenly and the momentum was not small, to them, it was completely insignificant. If it hit them once, then it was fine. But the strange races on Decabu Shang's side could not do so. Although their manpower surged over continuously, in just this short period of time, they had already gathered no less than 40 to 50,000 people. There were naturally many experts among them, but the majority of them were ordinary people. Facing such a sudden and unexpected natural disaster, and because of the dense number of people, there was no space for them to dodge. Amidst the thunderous sounds, many people were smashed until their heads were full of bumps, and some of the more unlucky ones were even smashed until their heads were covered in blood, dripping down. But both sides did not pay attention to this, and only looked at the changes in the sky. This was because the hailstorm was too unreasonable. It was too absurd. But such an absurd reality had appeared right in front of everyone's eyes. Not only that, for the southwest wind and northeast wind to blow at the same time, and for such an intense collision, no one had ever seen or even heard of such a thing before. What the hell was going on? The hailstones fell violently for a while, then stopped. This situation was as if the heavens were enraged, grabbing a huge basin and pouring it down, and when the basin was empty, there would be nothing left. Although this hail had only lasted for a short period of time, a thick layer of cobblestone-sized hailstones had piled up on the ground, shining brightly. It was just that the temperature of this place was too high, and in this extremely hot temperature, all the hailstones melted rapidly, gathering into a puddle of water. Following that, they turned into visible green smoke, quickly evaporating into the sky, forming thick cumulonimbus clouds. Chapter 1137. The strange colored smoke that was originally rushing towards the north like a lightning bolt retreated little by little. In the end, it actually changed its course and retreated towards the southwest in a defeated manner. After a while, as the northeast wind grew stronger and stronger, the originally unbearably hot weather actually began to cool down. In the end, the crowd was surprised to find that there were countless gravel and large branches flying over their heads. Was this strange northeast wind really so strong? The thick smoke that was originally rising to the sky from the volcanoes in all directions had only started to be blown towards the north by the southwest wind when it reached a height of several tens of zhang. But now, it only reached a height of 4 to 5 zhang before it was blown away. The colorful poisonous smoke surged towards the south of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. All the strange races who witnessed this scene were completely dumbfounded. Everyone knew that the smoke was poisonous. Earlier, everyone had already felt that it was extremely uncomfortable to breathe in it. Now, this seemingly endless poisonous smoke was pouring into the territory of the mutated races. Just how much damage would this cause? Everyone knew the answer in their hearts. Haha. Bear Mountain finally let out a long sigh of relief. Laughing like thunder, he said, "Two-headed trash, do you see this? Our brother-in-law always said that the heavens are watching what we do. Right now, even the heavens are not pleased with you guys. What a heaven-defying wind. Fuck, let's poison you bunch of bastards to death." A long howl rang out from afar, and a figure flashed in the air. A two-headed strange race man appeared in the air, his body shining with a silver light. His body was abnormally tall and sturdy. Following that, the man suddenly roared out in anger, "A mere black bear dares to boast so shamelessly. Watch this seat take your bare head." Before he finished speaking, it was as if two exceptionally dazzling bolts of lightning had appeared in the sky, and with a swoosh, they struck down towards Big Bear. Frenzy Blade Enduring Earths. The reason why the strange race's Enduring Earths were so arrogant was because of their blades. The ground ninja's main cultivation was only the Tao of the saber. And those who could be called Frenzy Blade Enduring Earths were all experts in the way of the blade. Furthermore, the person in front of him was a foreign race expert who had reached the Frenzy Blade Enduring Earths level. It was as if two experts of the same level were launching the sharpest and most lethal attack at Bear Mountain at the same time. Such an expert was just a single step away from becoming the lowest level supremacy Enduring Heavens. Such an existence had already reached the level of a hero among the strange races. When Dekabu Shang and Shangchuan Paku saw this person suddenly appear, they both revealed respectful expressions. This foreign race expert was the #1 expert in this area, the Frenzy Blade Enduring Earths, Qiangshang Nuju. Most of the mutated races were dominated by males, with females supporting them. However, there was a small group of females who were stronger than males. Therefore, the part that belonged to the female body occupied the dominant position of this body. Qiangshang Nuju was such an existence. His conjoined sister, who was also his wife, liked chrysanthemums. Especially the blooming golden chrysanthemums. Therefore he chose this name. Fuck. Your aura is pretty scary. Do you think this daddy is really afraid of you? Just because you have 2 heads does not mean that you are brave. What are you shouting about for? Did someone die in your family? Bear Mountain's huge body leapt into the air, brandishing the Bear King sword in midair. Cursing and swearing, he did not back down and charged forward viciously. The Bear King sword instantly turned into a streak of light, surging forward. This was the wondrous sword technique that Jun Moxie had personally taught him, one sword to destroy Heaven's Chosen. This move had an absolutely unexpected and miraculous effect when dealing with enemies who were attacking from the air. Behind the Eagle Tribe warriors, Saint Venerable Huang, one of the old beast kings of Tianfei, had just moved when his arm was grabbed by the Bear Saint Venerable. The Bear Saint Venerable shook his head lightly. Although we have the upper hand now, and this Frenzy Blade Enduring Earth is strong enough, it is not the time for us to make a move yet. What we need to deal with is the other side's supremacy Enduring Heavens. If they have their guard up, I'm afraid, after this battle, none of these 6,000 descendants will be able to return alive. But Little Bear, that brat Little Bear is completely unable to deal with this strange race's Saint Venerable Huang said anxiously. Could it be that we can just watch as he sends himself to death? One must know that if Little Bear dies, it will definitely be a devastating blow to the Bear tribe. These 3,000 warriors will immediately descend into madness. At that time, even if all of us appear, we will not be able to stop them. Do you think I don't understand the consequences? Am I not a member of the Bear tribe? But, even if these 3,000 warriors are all buried in there, we cannot act rashly. Saint Venerable Bear scoffed angrily. This is a war, and war is accompanied by sacrifices. We cannot allow our emotions to affect our decisions. If we cannot heavily injure a few supremacy Enduring Heavens at the first moment, the battles in the future will definitely be even more difficult. Right now, this is only the beginning. The main force of the strange races is still millions of li away. If we act rashly, we will only expose our trump cards. To the current Little Bear, the only thing we can do now is to believe in him. Being alive is luck, and dying is fate. Life and death are determined by fate. Saint Venerable Bear said coldly. No matter who it is, we cannot mess up the overall situation. But, Saint Venerable Huang finally softened, but his eyes were already filled with tears. Bear. Little Bear, he is your biological grandson. The only bloodline of your Bear King tribe. Saint Venerable Bear snorted and turned his old face to the side. His face twitched as he said, Big Bear is my grandson, but which one of the Tianfei warriors here isn't a descendant of yours and mine? In a war of life and death like this, what is there to talk about bloodline? Could it be that the bloodline of our Bear King tribe is so noble? Saint Venerable Huang sighed sadly, his face as dark as water. Finally, he did not speak anymore. Saint Venerable Lu sighed and said lightly, Old Bear's choice is correct. In a war like this, What we need to do is to perish together with the supremacy enduring heavens. If each of us can drag 2 people down with us, that would naturally be the best. If not, we will drag a supremacy enduring heavens down with us even if we have to die. Since we've already come here, which one of us still hopes to return alive? At this moment, bloodline is no longer important. The only important thing is the 10,000 years of glory of our Tion Fa. 10,000 years of strength of character. Only death awaits. If Bear Mountain dies here, I can only say that he died a heroic death. Other than that, this old man has nothing else to say. Saint Venerable Bear had a cold expression on his face. His white hair fluttered in the harsh north wind like a silent statue. But his hands that were hanging by his waist had already unconsciously clenched into fists. His pair of eyes had long been watching Big Bear's life and death battle in the air without blinking. Although he said that he did not care, and his actions did not show any abnormalities, but in his heart, he still could not help but care. Little Bear, my grandson, don't die. Ivan, you must live on. Bear Mountain's sword turned into a streak of light, charging forward without looking back. Qiangshang Nu Ju laughed maniacally. His laughter was sometimes a man's, sometimes a woman's, sometimes coarse and restless, and sometimes sharp and shrill. 2 streaks of blade light spun around like lightning, forming a bright screen of light that shot down from the sky. The goal of both of them was very clear: to end the battle quickly, to decide the victor in one move. In the instant that the saber and sword were about to meet, Bear Mountain roared with all his might, his eyes bloodshot. But he had already poured all his holy emperor-level Xian Qi into his sword without any reservations. Clang. The moment the saber and sword of both sides clashed, the air seemed to suddenly brighten for a moment. Everyone below felt a piercing pain in their eyes, as if they were walking on the streets when someone suddenly welded in front of them. Dang 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 dang. An endless stream of sounds rang out, like the wind blowing against the lotus leaves, or the rain hitting the banana leaves. The sounds were so dense that they seemed to form a long string. Qiangshang Nu Ju laughed sinisterly, and the male's saber slashed against Bear Mountain's sword. Following that, the female's saber also spun around like a whirlwind, smashing against Bear King's sword viciously. In the blink of an eye, the 2 sabers had already slashed against Bear Mountain's sword at least 100 times. With the senses of a martial artist, Qiangshang Nu Ju could clearly feel the danger of Bear Mountain's move, as well as the ferocious aura of wanting to perish together with the enemy. At this moment, even if he could chop off Bear Mountain's head, if he could not stop the trajectory of his sword, the sword would still bloom with its original brilliance. It would definitely not change. And this sword would definitely injure him, and he might even lose his life. The reason why Qiangshang Nu Ju dared to fight against Bear Mountain head-on without using any concealment techniques was because he and Bear Mountain were at the same level of cultivation. Bear Mountain was only one person, but Qiangshang Nu Ju was basically 2 people working together. Could it be that 2 people with the same thoughts could not defeat a single person? The most important point was that the Bear tribe had won a great victory, and the morale of their side was extremely low. Only by defeating Bear Mountain head-on and killing him would they be able to salvage the situation. But Qiangshang Nu Ju had never imagined that there would be such a powerful sword technique in this world that could actually allow him to surpass Bear Mountain's strength by a fold. Before the sword technique even reached him, he could already feel the threat of death. Thus, Qiangshang Nu Ju could only attack the sword in a frenzy. As long as he could completely disrupt this sword technique, he would be able to truly destroy that feeling of death. Only by breaking this sword technique would he be able to guarantee Bear Mountain's fate, so that he would not be able to escape from his grasp. Bear Mountain's sword technique did not change at all. His sword was trembling slightly, and fresh blood was already flowing out of his mouth. In the midst of his opponent's torrential barrage of attacks, with the strength of a single person going head-on against the combined attacks of 2 level 3 holy emperors, Bear Mountain's internal organs had already suffered severe injuries. But he still maintained the momentum of his sword technique. He continued to persevere, using all his strength to persevere. Gritting his teeth, glaring, and roaring like thunder, it was still that one sword breaking heaven's chosen sword technique. No matter how many times he wandered between life and death, it was still the one sword breaking heaven's chosen. Although Bear Mountain's sword light was starting to scatter, he was still able to withstand Qiangshan Nuju's fierce attacks, allowing the true might of this sword technique to blossom in the air like a peacock spreading its tail. I'm still remembering how much I owe everyone. Staying in the hospital for 4 days, the first 2 days had 2 night shifts, and the third day had 1 night shift. On the 4th day he had 1 night shift. On the 5th, 6th, and 7th days he had 2 night shifts. On the 8th and 9th day his wounds had split open, and he had 1 night shift. After that he went away high in Dalian. There were 2 days where he had 1 night shift, and 2 days where he was drunk and asked for leave. In total, he owed 12 chapters. As for the odd part, I'll just treat it as if I owe 20 chapters. Whatever you owe, there will always be interest. I don't like the feeling of owing others, and I especially don't like owing everyone. Every time I see the comments in the book review and phone, they say that I don't keep my word. My heart hurts. That feeling is even worse than being scolded. Thus, I'll make up for it all. I'd rather others owe me than I owe others. This is my personality. Today, I'll make up for the 4th night shift. I don't dare to guarantee that I'll be able to make up for it every day. But I'll definitely make up for it. From the day I'm done, or after this month, I'll update slowly to make time to prepare for the new book. At that time, there won't be any speed. I hope that everyone will be able to give me some understanding. Thank you. Chapter 1138. Open. Bear Mountain roared, and a round blood sword shot out with his roar. The one sword breaks heaven's chosen that he had been accumulating for a long time had finally erupted. Thousands of sword lights exploded in the air. It was as if thousands of rainbows that could pierce through the sun and moon had suddenly appeared at the same time. The thousands of sword lights were all aimed at a single person. Qiangshan Nuju roared in anger as he faced such a shocking move. His body spun even faster, and his 2 blades formed a whirlwind in the air, hoping to dodge the incoming attack. But facing the countless sword lights, Qiangshan Nuju could only roar in anger and scream in pain. He who had been attacking crazily just now had fallen into a perilous situation. Regret. That was the only thought in Qiangshan Nuju's mind. Why did I have to fight him head-on? Why did I not use the stealth kill technique? I hate it. Bear Mountain's expression was cold. Although blood was still flowing out of his mouth, his heart was as firm as a boulder. He continued to control the sword in his hand and unleashed the one sword breaks heaven's chosen to its fullest potential. Suddenly, a shrill and miserable howl that didn't sound like a human's voice rang out. No one present was able to identify the owner of this howl. Following that, dozens of arrows of blood shot out from the sky. It was as if a huge blood porcupine had suddenly appeared in the sky. Everyone on the ground looked at the intense battle in the sky, not daring to breathe too loudly. Who would win and who would lose would be revealed in a short while. Finally, Bear Mountain's heroic laughter rang out, and his entire body descended rapidly. No, he did not descend. He fell powerlessly from the sky. It was clear that Bear Mountain's strength had been completely overdrawn. I'll kill you. I'll definitely kill you, you damned bear. This time, 2 shrill cries rang out at the same time. That originally vigorous voice was now as sharp as the original female voice. As for the female voice, it was as if she was on the verge of death. Qiangshan Nuju's majestic body had actually been split into 2. Unbeknownst to him, his body had already been split into 2 by Bear Mountain's sword. As for Bear Mountain, he had completely lost his strength after unleashing this final attack. But this kind of injury, even to a supremacy enduring heavens, was a fatal blow. The connecting parts of the 2 bodies were cut off, and the blood of the strange races gushed out like it was free. 2 silhouettes shot towards Bear Mountain's lifeless body like meteors, their long blades gleaming brightly. Heartless. The Eagle King let out a loud roar and soared into the sky. Like a bolt of lightning, he rushed to Bear Mountain's aid, but it was obvious that he was too late. The distance between Bear Mountain and Qiangshan Nuju was simply too close. Qiangshang Nuju's male body laughed savagely as he stabbed his long saber into Bear Mountain's left chest, twisting it with all his might. At the same time, the female body's saber slashed down on Bear Mountain's right shoulder like a bolt of lightning. It had actually slashed down to his waist. Bear King's internal organs were all exposed. This was Qiangshang Nuju's final counterattack. In truth, the moment he was struck by the sword, his fate was already sealed. So after these two slashes, his two bodies also fell to the ground with a loud thud. Anyone could tell that Qiangshang Nuju, this strange race's frenzy blade enduring earth, was finished. But as his opponent, Tian Fa's Bear King, Bear Mountain, also did not have the slightest chance of survival. The final result was that both sides were dead. In the distance, Saint Venerable Bear's body trembled violently as his face turned pale. His mouth was wide open, and his hands stretched out as if he wanted to catch something. But in the end, his hands fell down powerlessly. Saint Venerable Huang's lips trembled as he let out a deep sigh. King! 3,000 bear warriors roared at the same time, their voices extremely shrill. Their boorish faces were filled with endless grief and indignation. 3,000 pairs of eyes turned red at the same time. If the king dies, we will wash the strange races with blood. Take revenge for the king. Xiong Kai-shan's waist was still embedded with a snow-white long saber. His majestic body was almost cut into two halves. But when he fell from the sky, he used the last of his strength to turn over, and finally landed on his feet steadily, standing on the ground. He staggered a few steps. Fresh blood spurted out of his mouth, but he stood firmly. His eyes were clearly lifeless, but they still exuded a domineering aura. Pudong, pudong, two sounds rang out, and Qiangshang Nuju's two halves also fell in front of Bear Mountain. Two pairs of eyes glared at Bear Mountain viciously. Ha! Bear Mountain coughed out a mouthful of blood and laughed. You still fucking died in front of this daddy, right? No matter how shameless you are, fighting 2 against 1, didn't you still die in this daddy's hands? Fuck, 2 heads, 2 bodies, what's so great about that? Fuck, won't you still die with 1 slash? Bullshit. Let's see who dies first. Qiangshang Nuju gasped for breath with great difficulty. The 2 halves of his body were actually huddled together in the pool of blood. With a sinister smile, he looked at Bear Mountain. Bear King, if I can't see you die, why would this seat leave before you? You want to see me die? Bear Mountain coughed as if he had heard the funniest joke. His flesh and blood curled outwards, and half of his body seemed like it would fall off at any moment. He gritted his teeth and actually pulled out the long blade from his body. He threw it on the ground with a clang and staggered 2 steps. He took a deep breath and forcefully put the 2 pieces of his body back together. Then an extremely strange smile appeared on his pale face. You are destined to be disappointed. As he said that, his left hand, which was the only part of his body that could still move, moved and took out a pill from somewhere. Raising his head, he swallowed it. Medicine? Do you think that medicine will be of any use for this kind of injury? Do you think it can help you stall for a moment? Unless there really are miracles in this world. Qiangshang Nuju looked at Bear Mountain mockingly. But in the next instant, his eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. In truth, something truly inconceivable had happened. After Bear Mountain swallowed the strange pill, his entire body actually began to emit a purple mist. Within the mist, there was even a hint of green. That was the power of life. The color of life. The radiance of life. Bear Mountain's body continued to emit a mysterious purple ling qi. Then, Qiangshang Nuju discovered to his despair that the other party's body that had clearly been split apart had actually been pieced back together. The blood had also stopped flowing, and his entire body was actually healing. Although the healing speed was slow, it was clearly visible to the naked eye. The huge saber wound on his chest was also slowly shrinking, and in the blink of an eye, it had already disappeared. Bear Mountain laughed heartily. His body had actually completely healed. If this was not an inconceivable miracle, what was it? Bear King stretched his back lazily, then moved his arms and legs a few times. Only then did he wake up from his daze. Looking at Qiangshang Nuju's eyes that had widened to their limits, Bear Mountain curled his lips in disdain. Twisting his butt, he winked and said, "Monster! You want to see this Grandpa Bear die first? Sorry I've let you down. Fight with this daddy? This daddy here has medicine. Do you have it? Are you very angry? Are you very disappointed? Are you very indignant? Pa, I understand you. Long live understanding." Qiangshang Nuju roared with extreme grief and indignation. All of a sudden, the two halves of his body leaped up like a dead fish. Both of his right hands trembled as they pointed at Bear Mountain. Suddenly, his body straightened up in the air and fell to the ground. He was no longer breathing. However, his 4 eyes were still wide open, as though he had died with a grievance. Bear Mountain laughed heartily, but his eyes subconsciously looked towards the north. In his heart he said, "Thank you, brother-in-law. It's you who gave me, this old bear, a second life." Originally, Qiangshang Nuju's cultivation was above Bear Mountain's. After all, his cultivation was the result of his own bitter cultivation, while Bear King's cultivation had been enhanced by medicine. In addition, he was a man and a woman working together, causing his strength to increase exponentially. Even if he did not use his stealth secret technique, Bear Mountain would still die 10 times out of 10 against him. If he used his stealth killing technique, even if Bear Mountain and Eagle King worked together, the chances of victory would still be extremely slim. The strange race's Frenzy Blade enduring Earths were extremely savage and savage in nature. How could they be underestimated? However, he had made too many miscalculations in this battle. Firstly, the first miscalculation was that he did not expect that the weapon in Bear Mountain's hands would actually be an extremely rare divine weapon. Bear Mountain's personal weapon, Bear King's sword, was a top-notch weapon that had been refined by Jun Moxie using the power of gold of his 5 elements mystic arts. The power of gold was a mystic art that had long surpassed the boundaries of the mortal world. It was a true immortal technique. The weapon that Jun Moxie had gifted to his own brother-in-law naturally could not be a defective one. Regardless of sharpness or sturdiness, Bear King's sword was at least a grade higher than Qiangshang Nuju's Frenzy Blade. Thus, even if Qiangshang Nuju's 2 earth-enduring frenzied blades were crazily chopping down, if it was a normal weapon, or even a divine weapon in the general sense, it would probably have been reduced to a sky full of shattered metal fragments under such devastation. But to Bear King's sword, it was completely able to withstand it, and could even slash with ease. This was also because Bear Mountain's cultivation was at a disadvantage. If their cultivation levels were equal, with this divine weapon he could find a chance to counterattack, and this tough battle would have ended long ago. The second surprise was that in these 10,000 years, there had been many battles in the war for seizing the heavens. The experts of the strange races had also fought against the warriors of the Bear tribe more than once. It could be said that they had a deep understanding of the skills and techniques of the Bear tribe, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that they were extremely familiar with them. Especially those powerful forbidden techniques of the Bear tribe, the strange races were even more careful. Chapter 1139. Because of that, after it was passed down, every single expert of the outsider's race would conduct a thorough analysis of all the races of Tianfe. From different angles, they would find out the weaknesses of each race and prepare for battle. This was a rather brilliant move, and it could be said that it was better to be prepared than to be worried about. But who would have thought that the techniques that they had spent so much time and effort to research, the techniques that were used to deal with the Tianfe beasts, and even the strange race's ancestors had spent thousands of years to come up with, would turn out to be a trap in this battle today. A fatal trap. But the Xian beasts of Tianfe were also completely clueless about this fatal trap. They didn't even know when they had completed setting up this trap for the strange races. The answer was actually very simple. When Jun Moxie entered Tianfe and got to know all the beast kings, he only had one feeling towards the attacking methods of the Tianfe beasts. Their fighting style was too simple. They were completely relying on their innate talent and instincts to fight. How could this do? The 3 ultimate moves of the ferocious tiger, pounce, lean, and sweep of the tail, were undoubtedly sharp. But no matter how sharp the moves were, the moment they were used repeatedly, the threat would be greatly reduced, and it would be easier for the opponent to find out where the flaws were. As long as a strategy was used to counter it, it would be a guaranteed death. If that was really the case, then Tian Fa's Xian beasts would no longer be going out to fight, but sending themselves to their deaths. Jun Dashao naturally didn't want his brothers-in-law to be so lacking in attacking techniques. In the past, they didn't have such conditions, so it was fine if they were simple. But now, Jun Dashao had lived 2 lives, and could be said to be very knowledgeable. He had memorized many ancient martial arts from his previous life, and the Hongjun Pagoda and the art of unlocking heaven's fortune had made up for all his deficiencies, be it in terms of techniques or theories. As a result, under Jun Mo's vigorous promotion, the entire Tian Fa ferocious lands and the various races' martial arts and battle techniques were completely renewed. Compared to the monotonous traditional fighting style of the past, it could be said to be a completely different matter. To the strange races who had a deep-rooted understanding of Tian Fa, this difference was a fatal trap with just a casual move. For example, ferocious tiger pouncing on sheep was a top-down, tough move. When the opponent used this move, they would subconsciously use the corresponding counter move. However, when you used that technique to break the technique, you would discover that the opponent's technique only had the appearance of a ferocious tiger pouncing on a sheep. Deep down, it was the extremely soft and gentle spirit snake spitting tongue. Furthermore, the hidden killing technique was actually the monkey steals the peach that was impossible to change. What kind of feeling would that be? When Jun Moxie had imparted these moves and basic techniques to them, he had never thought so far ahead. The strange races were fortunate enough to be able to eat this soup. It was completely a coincidence and a stroke of luck. Jun Dashao did not do it on purpose. This was because these strange and deviant moves were prepared by Jun Moxie for the experts of the 3 Holy Lands. But now, the unlucky ones were the strange races. The will of the heavens was truly unfathomable. Thus, this one sword breaking heavens chosen of Bear Mountain was based on the Bear tribe's Monarch sword of the 9 heavens. But after Jun Moxie changed it, everything changed. When Qiangshang Nuju saw Bear Mountain leaping up, he immediately thought of this infamous killing technique, the Monarch sword of the 9 heavens. This was the signature killing technique of the Bear tribe. But after so many years, the strange races had already researched a technique that could counter this move. Thus, Qiangshang Nuju was extremely confident in his stance, waiting for Bear Mountain to fall into his death trap. Then he would deliver a fatal blow and everything would be over. But Qiangshang Nuju had never expected that the sovereign sword of the 9 heavens, which he was extremely familiar with, would suddenly transform into a move that he had never seen before, the one sword breaking heavens chosen. All of his plans had gone down the drain. In that instant, no one would be able to understand just how complicated Qiangshang Nuju's feelings were. There was only one thing that was certain. With Qiangshang Nuju's strength, if he had discovered from the start that this wasn't the so-called Monarch sword of the 9 heavens, then no matter how strong the one sword breaking heavens chosen was, it would not have been able to kill him. At most, it would only be a heavy injury. But his opponent had already unleashed more than half of its power, and both sides were about to clash. Only then did Qiangshang Nuju realize that something was amiss. This isn't the Monarch sword of the 9 heavens. I've been tricked? Thus, Qiangshang Nuju immediately panicked. When one's life was in danger, no matter who it was, they would panic. In truth, with Qiangshang Nuju's cultivation, if he didn't panic, he would definitely fall into a disadvantageous position. However, he definitely wouldn't lose his life. Even if he suffered heavy injuries in the end, the Bear King would definitely pay with his life. With his mind in a mess, his aura would be greatly damaged. At that time, it would be too late to dodge. The grand might of the one sword breaking heavens chosen had already locked onto him. At this time, if he forcefully activated his stealth kill technique, it would be equivalent to completely giving up on his defense, and he would undoubtedly die even faster. Thus, in his impatience, Qiangshang Nuju immediately began his counterattack in order to fight for his life. Unfortunately, his decisiveness was a moment too late. In a battle between experts, the slightest difference could lead to a difference of 1,000 miles. A slight difference could determine life and death. One sword breaking heaven's chosen was not an ordinary technique. It was a technique that Jun Dushao had specially designed for Bear Mountain Shan's brother-in-law. When this technique was truly used, it would be able to double Bear Mountain Shan's attack power. With the sharpness of Bear King's sword, the immense might of the one sword breaking heaven's chosen, and Bear Mountain Shan's holy emperor Xian Qi and brute strength, Qiangshang Nuju's one sword breaking heaven's chosen was finally able to split Qiangshang Nuju into two. But what changed the outcome of this battle was the third miscalculation. Bear King actually had a heaven-defying immortal medicine on him that could bring the dead back to life. This was the most grievous part of Qiangshang Nuju's death. His overall strength was clearly much higher than his opponent's, almost several times that of his opponent. But in the end, he still ended up perishing together with his opponent. This had already caused Qiangshang Nuju, who was a frenzy blade enduring earths, to feel so depressed that he wanted to die again. But in the blink of an eye, he discovered that his opponent had casually swallowed a pill, and he was as lively as a dragon and as lively as a tiger, completely unharmed. It could be said that Qiangshang Nuju had been angered to death. With his profound cultivation, he should have been able to linger on for another half a day or so. But because of this series of mishaps, he was angered, embarrassed, dejected, and incredulous. In the end, he breathed his last. Such a humiliating death, to an expert, was definitely as unjust as the snow in June. Let this daddy slaughter you, and enjoy myself to my heart's content. Come out, let this daddy slaughter you, and enjoy myself to my heart's content. What kind of nonsense is this? You came all the way here with us just to let you enjoy yourself? If it was before this sentence from Bear King would definitely attract the curses of at least 10,000 people. But at this moment, not a single person responded. All the strange races had looks of panic on their faces, and they all took a step back in unison. The fear in their eyes could not be concealed at all. Especially Sichuan Pagua, who was still fighting with Bear Mountain Shan, he almost fainted from the shock. Fucka, this bear actually hid his strength so well. Luckily this daddy did not press too hard just now, and retreated as soon as I realized that something was wrong. Otherwise, looking at Qiangshang Nuju's corpse that had been split into two, Sichuan Pagua could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. His entire body exploded, and the two faces on his two heads turned pale. Otherwise, the one lying there in two halves right now would be me. That was still fine. There were always accidents on the battlefield, and it was not as if the weak had never won against the strong before. But this was really fucking ridiculous. That black bear had clearly suffered 2 fatal injuries, and his heart was completely destroyed. His body was also split into 2, but he had actually recovered now. And he was even jumping around. This was too bizarre. Since this bear had a medicine that could make him immortal after eating it, why the hell was he still fighting with him? If he continued fighting with him, wasn't that just seeking death? Our king is mighty. Our king is invincible. The 3,000 bear warriors cheered thunderously. At this moment where one side was filled with anxiety and the other side was filled with thunderous cheers, the Eagle King was frowning as he looked at the sky. They could still hold on for the time being, but from the moment the Eagle Bear Coalition army landed until now, only less than 2 hours had passed. It would take at least 6 hours for the second batch of reinforcements to arrive. However, in less than 2 hours, the other side had already sent out close to 200 hell-enduring ghosts, as well as a frenzy blade enduring earth expert. Fortunately, Fourth Brother had managed to kill off the strongest expert of the other side, temporarily stabilizing the situation. But only the heavens knew how many more monsters would appear in the next 6 hours. This position was just right on a large road, and both sides were evenly matched. If the other side really sent more experts over and saw through their formation, then they would launch a full-force attack. At that time, he and Bear Mountain might not be able to hold on. The Eagle King sucked in a deep breath and turned to look at the 8 people at the back of his group. His heart was filled with confidence. Perhaps, with the 8 Saint Venerables and Saint Kings here, they should be able to hold on for 6 hours. But at this time, there was a sudden rumbling sound from afar. This kind of concentrated sound was unusually loud and actually surpassed the rumbling of the distant volcano eruption. At the same time, a strange and indescribable sound rose from all directions, like the cries of ghosts. In that instant, the entire world seemed to be filled with a sinister and eerie aura. This eerie aura was completely different from the cold aura of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. The aura of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters emphasized on the word cold, but this eerie aura was filled with the atmosphere of a ghostly realm. When I applied for leave from my surgery, someone said, "It's just a small surgery, and you don't even need to rest. Why the hell are you applying for leave? Are you lying to us?" When I was drunk and asked for leave, someone said, "You just had such a big surgery. You still dare to drink? Are you lying to us?" Let's not talk about the fact that it's been more than 20 days since my surgery, or the size of the surgery. Even if I don't say it, everyone knows this. Indeed, the surgery was not big. Chapter 1140. As the rumbling sounds got closer and closer, the faces of the foreign races, who were originally in panic and fear, all revealed expressions of ecstasy. With a thought, the Eagle King spread his wings and flew into the air, looking into the distance. Even with the guts of the Eagle King, he could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. In the distance, there was a black mass that seemed to stretch all the way to the ends of the world. Countless 2-headed monsters were riding strange-looking horses, whipping their mounts with all their might as they galloped over in a frenzy. In the sky, in front of these monsters, there were hundreds of small black dots flying in the air. Their momentum was as fast as lightning and as fast as rolling thunder. These black dots in the sky were obviously the peak experts of the strange races. Based on their flying speed, the weakest among them should be at the level of the frenzy blade enduring Earths. This time, we're in big trouble. The Eagle King, who understood the dire situation in front of him, could not help but be shocked. An extreme sense of danger flashed through his mind. The strange race's main forces and experts are approaching at high speed. Everyone, get into formation. Everyone, prepare for battle. The Eagle King flapped his wings and hollered loudly. The expressions of the 3,000 eagle people behind him turned serious. Following their usual training, they split into groups of 10 and stood in a battle formation. With a loud clang, the long sabers were unsheathed at the same time. The Bear Tribe warriors retreated 10 steps in unison, echoing the Eagle people, also forming a battle formation of 10 people. Bear King and Bear Mountain gave the order, and the Eagle and Bear tribes crossed each other, instantly forming into a new battle formation. With 20 people in a group, 10 Eagle people, 10 Bear people, and crossed each other. The long sabers in their hands shone with a cold light as they advanced in unison. At this moment, everyone thought of June Moxie's words. As long as you still have a comrade in front of you, then you have the responsibility to use all your strength, your life, to protect his back. As long as there are enemies in front of you, as long as you are still breathing, your only responsibility is to kill them. You don't need to worry about your own defense, nor do you need to worry about your safety, because your comrades will protect you from behind. The atmosphere here was so heavy that it seemed as if it would condense into a solid substance. It was like a huge barrel of gunpowder. So long as it was touched, even if it was just a small spark, it would cause a huge explosion that could shake the heavens and the earth. The strength of Saint Venerable Lu and the rest was naturally incomparable to that of the Eagle King. They had already noticed the group of people rushing over like shooting stars from afar. Exchanging glances, all 8 of their eyes were extremely heavy, because the situation in front of them was already extremely bad. After seeing the experts of the outsiders who were about to arrive, the 8 of them no longer had the slightest bit of confidence in whether or not they could hold on to this battle. The other side has 13 supremacy enduring heavens. 300 frenzy blade enduring earths had arrived, and nearly 3,000 hell enduring ghosts. The rest of them all had the strength of a level 9 ninja. The total number of them should be more than 100,000. This kind of strength. Saint Venerable Lu looked indifferently into the distance. Although he was not of the eagle people, there was a sharp and cruel gleam in his eyes. 7 brothers, I'm afraid that the big day that we've been waiting for our entire lives has finally arrived. 6 hours, there's still 6 hours. Saint Venerable Bear's expression was solemn as he looked longingly at Bear Mountain, who was at the forefront of the Bear tribe warriors. He said calmly, "We must use our strength, our lives, to stop these bastards for 6 hours, at least 6 hours. Even if we have to die a horrible death, we must not let them pass. We must hold on until reinforcements arrive. We must not let those enduring heavens use the stealth kill technique. If we are determined to move out, then in the first wave of attacks, we must use a suicidal method to kill at least 8 supremacy enduring heavens. Then, with the help of the heaven reversal pill, we can surround and attack the remaining few. If we are lucky enough to succeed, and if there are any survivors among us, there is only one thing left. Attack with all your strength and kill as many frenzy blade enduring earths as possible." Saint Venerable Lu's voice was clear and calm. Facing this intense battle that was about to come, there was not the slightest bit of fluctuation in his emotions. "Good. Let us burn our lives to ashes today." In an instant, the eyes of the 8 old brothers narrowed, and they prepared to attack with all their strength. It will be glorious because of us. Even if we die, we must not weaken the 10,000 years of the Tian Fa Holy Land's name. Saint Venerable Lu said lightly, "As for our descendants, we do not need to care, and cannot care. Everyone must remember that the moment you divert your attention to pay attention to your descendants, you will be delayed by a hair's breadth because of this. And this hair's breadth of delay may bring immeasurable harm to your descendants. If we divert our attention like that, not only are we not caring for them, we are harming them instead. Only by attacking with all our strength and killing as many enemies as possible can we truly ensure the continuation of our Tian Fa bloodline in the future. The more we kill, the safer our descendants will be. Everyone understands this logic." Saint Venerable Lu's voice was getting more and more intense. His eyes were also faintly suffused with blood red. He had already mobilized all the power in his body. He was just waiting for that thunderous strike to explode. A sharp howl suddenly pierced through the air. Following that, another hundreds of sharp howls rang out at the same time. A violent aura swept across the entire land in an instant. Along with the whistling northern wind, the countless shattered sky pillars and mountain stones were once again pushed back in the opposite direction by the strong airflow. Dust instantly covered the sky and covered the sun. Following that, a violent voice came from afar. "Which tribe of the divine sun is it in front? Why aren't you attacking? Why are you standing still? Tyrannical tyrant! Hurry up and charge!" This sudden shout seemed to have some kind of magical power that caused one's heart to tremble. After this shout, Shangchuan Paku, Shachuan Pagua and the rest who were originally facing off against the Bear Tribe Eagle people, as well as Dekabu Shang and the rest who were watching from afar, suddenly let out a loud roar at the same time. Everyone's eyes were bloodshot, as if they had completely lost their minds. But if one looked carefully, they would discover that deep in their eyes, there was still a deep sense of fear. As if this shout from afar could make them suffer a fate worse than death at any moment. As if they would rather die fighting on the front lines than endure the shout of the person who had just shouted. Following that, a muffled roar of unknown meaning burst out from the throats of the tens of thousands of strange races in front of them. The next moment, the strange races who had been holding back due to fear and panic suddenly surged forward like a flood, unafraid of death. In just an instant, the battle that had temporarily calmed down had directly turned intense to a white-hot stage. The degree of madness of the strange races was actually no less than that of the Bear Tribe warriors from Tian Fa. Luckily, they were facing the Eagle Bear Alliance, whose battle intent and aura were not inferior to the strange races. At this moment, Eagle King and Bear King turned back to look into the distance at the same time, their gazes fierce. Resolutely and deeply. They were looking in the direction of the Tian Fa forest. Just a glance. Just a glance. In such a situation, I probably won't be able to return to my homeland anymore. My homeland far away, let me take one more look. Then, they quickly turned their heads, their eyes spitting fire as they looked at the strange races that were getting closer and closer. The next moment, kill for Tionefe Holy Land. For the glory of Tionefe, kill all these scums. Bear King roared and straightened his back. With a boom, an abnormally thick white fog rose from his body. As the white fog dissipated, this famous Bear King of Tionefe suddenly turned back into his original beast form, a huge bear that was at least 3 zhang tall. The huge bear's arms were almost as thick as a human's thighs. He reached behind his back and pulled out a huge blade. The back of the blade was a foot thick, and the blade was close to 5 zhang wide. The blade was about 3 zhang long. At a glance, that blade looked like a huge door. Then, Bear King's right hand stabbed the Bear King sword into a round metal pillar. With a cot sound, the sword was locked inside. This metal pillar was at least 2.5 zhang long and as thick as a normal person's arms. With a cot sound, the door-like blade was already attached to the metal pillar. In that instant, an unimaginable peerless weapon was formed in Bear King's hands. Even in the entire Tionefe, only 2 people could use a weapon like this. Bear King, Bear Mountain, and the old Bear King, the Saint Venerable Bear. Other people really couldn't use it. Even Jun Emosia himself couldn't use it, because this thing was simply too big, and too heavy. After the blade was connected to the metal pillar, the entire blade was over 4 zhang long and weighed 1,600 jin. If not for the fact that the Bear King of the bear race was a ferocious man with innate divine strength, ordinary experts would find it very difficult to even lift it up. For this blade, Bear Mountain had begged Jun Moxie for 3 whole days. That was why Jun Moxie had reluctantly forged such a unique blade for him. This blade was actually made for the Bear King who had reverted to his original form. Such a ferocious weapon was definitely one of a kind in the world when used in battle. Wherever the blade passed, it was as if it was cutting through dry weeds and rotten wood, and a large area was cut down. Bear King leaned on the ferocious weapon in his hand. Lengleng looked at the approaching strange races with a cruel and bloodthirsty look in her eyes. At this moment, Bear Mountain was like an indomitable god of war, overlooking the world. Closer, even closer. Bear Mountain raised his right hand and suddenly pulled the blade out from the ground. Slashing it forward, he shouted, "Go! Everyone move! Kill them all viciously for this daddy!" The 6,000 warriors behind him roared in unison. Bear Mountain laughed heartily and took a large step forward. Like a violent whirlwind, his heavy footsteps caused the ground to tremble. In just 3 steps, Bear Mountain's huge body had already charged into the sea of strange races. With a loud roar, the 4 zhang long blade was like a bolt of lightning that shook the heavens and earth, sweeping out horizontally. Accompanied by the might of an army of 10,000, it was an unparalleled ferociousness that slashed through the heavens and earth. Bear Mountain roared excitedly. The muscles on his arms bulged, and the blade actually formed a bright ring. Endless slaughter. Chapter 1141. Today's 4th night. Make up for today's 6th night. In an orderly fashion, over 40 strange races in front of Bear King were instantly sliced into 80 or 90 pieces by this terrifying slash. Like an electrically controlled fountain that had suddenly been switched on, all the blood sprayed into the air at the same time. Bear Mountain did not stop at all. His feet continued to stride forward, and the blade in his hands swept back in the opposite direction. There was no difference in the outcome. Right now, the Bear King didn't even need to use any techniques. He just swept his saber left and right. Just like that, human heads bounced up and down as though fresh beans had been thrown into a red-hot wok, and they bounced up and down in the air. Miserable screams and battle cries were deafening. Behind him, the 6,000 Tionefe warriors each held a terrifying and bloodthirsty long blade. Although it was not as exaggerated as Bear Mountain's, it was still several times longer and 3 times heavier than normal weapons. Using the same method, they charged forward in a grand manner. Everywhere they passed, blood splashed everywhere. Heads rolled and flew in all directions. Severed limbs and limbs flew all over the sky. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Big Bear's huge body suddenly soared into the sky, and he swung his saber wildly, slashing it close to his neck. Then his body spun in midair, and an even more powerful saber slash left his hand. Brothers, is everyone satisfied with today's battle? Bear Mountain's laughter rumbled through the heavens. Satisfied, extremely satisfied. The 6,000 warriors all laughed loudly. Even as blood flowed, their expressions did not change, and they looked excited. Are all of you satisfied? Another 2 blades slashed across the sky. Not enough. Far from enough. A loud roar rang out. Do you want to be more satisfied? Bear Mountain laughed heartily. The blade in front of him flashed, and blood flowed into the air. Heads flew everywhere. Yes. If you want, then continue to kill these bastards. Let's see if I can satisfy my craving after killing them all. Bear Mountain roared. At this moment, Bear King was completely immersed in excitement. At this moment, Bear King's heart was filled with nothing but slaughter. Kill all of these bastards. Kill all these bastards. The fighting spirit of the 6,000 warriors rose even higher. Each of them took large strides and charged forward with all their might. A total of several thousand broadswords joined together to form a snow-white rainbow that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, creating a bloody storm that connected heaven and earth. The screams of the strange races rang out one after another. Almost at the moment of contact, thousands of strange races had already died under the sabers. However, this group of 2-headed monsters seemed to have completely lost their minds this time. Each and every one of them had bloodshot eyes and howled. Even though they knew they were no match for him, they still charged forward without fear of death and launched a human wave attack. Bear Mountain took the lead. His 3-zhang tall body was like a sturdy iron tower, moving swiftly in the crowd. Some of the strange races with lower cultivation bases were stomped down by his enormous feet. It was a clear and resounding sound, as if he had stepped on an air toad and crushed them from head to toe into a ball of minced meat. Dang! A loud sound rang out, and Bear Mountain's body trembled. He raised his bloodshot eyes and looked up. He saw a figure stumbling backwards in front of him. Decabushang. This was the only obstacle that Bear Mountain had met since the start of his frenzied charge. He was also the only one who could block Bear King's whirlwind footsteps in a direct confrontation. Bastard, report your name. Big Bear shouted loudly. The air seemed to tremble because of this, and the blood pillar in the air suddenly trembled a few times. Then, it drew a curve in the air like a spirit snake, and fell down. Tyrant! That damned black bear! This seat is Decabushang. Decabushang used all his strength to clash with Bear Mountain. The long saber in his hand had already been broken into 7 or 8 pieces by Bear King's counterattack, and his hands were bleeding profusely. Even the corners of his mouth were bleeding profusely. Although his strength was not weak, there was still a huge gap between him and the king of the Bear Clan, who had already recovered to his original form and appeared with his strongest battle strength. Don't wear pants just because you got it? Your granny, what kind of **T name is that? I originally thought that you bastards were perverted, but your names are actually so perverted. Bear Mountain glared at him. Fuck your grandpa. Don't tell me you're going to be naked every day? You're even more disgusting than those 2 bastards who are wearing tattered pants and tattered robes. Since you've seen your grandpa bear, why haven't you hung yourself? What are you waiting for? Do you really want your grandpa bear to go through so much trouble? Decabushang was angered by Bear King's words, and his eyes turned red. He was on the verge of vomiting blood as he cursed loudly. Tyrant! Tyrant? Your grandpa bear has no reason to deal with trash like you, even if it's your sister or your grandmother, it's useless. Bear Mountain glared at him fiercely. Come, let me chop off your dog head. I'll send you on your way. With a wave of his long saber, it slashed down with the howling of the wind. At this moment, the fierce wind brought about by the long saber actually covered the howling of the northeast wind in the sky. Decabushang only felt as if everything in the world had suddenly disappeared, leaving only this murderous saber. He knew that the opponent's Xian cultivation was about the same as his, but at this moment he was already overwhelmed by the opponent's ferocious aura. Facing such an expert, losing control of one's mind was equivalent to losing half the battle. How would Dekebu Shang dare to borrow another move? With a loud shout, a thick cloud of smoke exploded out, covering the space in front of him. He said fiercely, "Bear King, you, the king of Tian, do you have the guts to fight me one-on-one?" Stealth kill technique. Bear Mountain immediately thought of Eagle King's reminder. Stealth kill technique is not suitable for chaotic battles. He couldn't help but laugh loudly. "Good. Do you think this king will be afraid of a trash from a strange race like you?" Dekebu Shang was overjoyed. He quickly changed to a different saber and laughed sinisterly. "Bear King, you really have guts. You're a real man, come with me." As he said, he took the lead and soared into the sky. In order to guide Bear King to follow, he purposely scattered a thick cloud of black smoke behind him, meaning, "I'm leaving from here, hurry up and come over. We'll fight one-on-one, let me defeat the strong and chop off the bear's head." The stealth kill technique was indeed not suitable for chaotic battles, especially in such a large-scale battlefield like this. So the moment Dekebu Shang received the other party's promise, he immediately soared into the sky and left the battlefield. In an instant, he was already 40 to 500 feet away. He was completely confident that as long as Bear King caught up, he would be able to toy the other party to death with the stealth kill technique. Bear King looked at him disdainfully, a crafty glint flashing in his eyes. He suddenly shouted loudly, "I'm coming!" Dekebu Shang was overjoyed. After Bear Mountain shouted that, he twisted his body and charged towards the other side where the strange races were more concentrated. His saber rose and fell, sweeping horizontally. Wherever the bright saber light passed, at least 100 strange races screamed miserably as they were decapitated. Following that, Bear King's body was like a thunder god descending upon the world, descending into the densest area of the strange races. He lowered his body and directly swung his saber. His body spun rapidly on the ground like a spinning top, advancing rapidly. Then, the saber around his body formed flashing rings of light, bringing with it fresh blood as he advanced continuously. Endless path of blood. Pew. Countless broken limbs and broken bodies accompanied by the dazzling saber light flew into the sky one after another. Endless blood-curdling screams rose and fell. Dekebu Shang only realized that something was amiss after flying for 100 zhang. Turning back to look, he was so angry that his vision turned black, and he almost fell from the sky. "Bear King, you're shameless. You're despicable. We agreed to fight one-on-one. Where's your credibility? What kind of man are you?" Dekebu Shang felt like vomiting blood, his body trembling in anger. If he was still blocking Bear Mountain, how could he have killed hundreds of his own tribesmen? This bastard! He actually didn't keep his word. Where's the spirit of a warrior? Big Bear turned a deaf ear and did not reply. He waved the big saber in his hand with all his might and only shouted, "Kill!" Then he leaped, turned around and roared, "Fuck!" Another wave of saber slashes that was killing to his heart's content. Dekebu Shang was so angry that his lips trembled. With a swoosh, he flew back and pointed at Bear Mountain, scolding, "Bear King, do you still have the demeanor of a king? Bastard, you're despicable and shameless. Are you still a man?" At this moment, he was still invisible, so he could only hear him scolding Bear Mountain, but Bear Mountain could not see him. But he really should not have spoken in front of Bear Mountain. Bear Mountain squinted his eyes, and still did not say a word. His reply was a horizontal slash. "Sush!" Dekebu Shang cried out in shock, and was almost hit by Bear King's slash. He scolded angrily, "Bear King, you're despicable." But halfway through his words, he suddenly screamed. Because at this moment, the long blade in Bear Mountain's hand spun like a windmill, forming a mountain of blades and a net of blades. Following that, he shouted, "A few people, come over and shatter this piece of air for this daddy." With a single order, a few bear warriors who were fighting nearby immediately rushed back, their bodies bathed in blood. Before they even arrived, several streaks of saber light had already completely sealed off the space that the Bear King's saber had enveloped in a radius of several dozen zhang. Ah! Debu Shang howled miserably, and a bright blood light suddenly exploded in the air. Fuck your granny. Now that the battlefield is dangerous, who has the mood to fight with a bastard like you who hides his head and shows his tail? Damn it, back in the Tian Fa forest, they all said that this daddy was a simple-minded person. Now that we're here, a bastard like you actually thinks that this daddy is a big idiot. Pooey. Whether I am a man or not, you know. Only my harem has the qualifications to say whether I am a man or not. What an idiot. Bear Mountain scolded proudly. On the tip of his blade, there was a person, Decabu Shang. The head of the Deca family was held up in midair like a rag by Mo Wuji. There was a large hole in his chest, piercing through his two bodies. Under the combined efforts of several bear warriors and Bear King, Decabu Shang, who had his position locked onto, could no longer hide. Bear Mountain's saber pierced through his body. At this moment, the four eyes of Decabu Shang's two bodies were burning with rage. He fiercely turned his head to look at Bear Mountain. Why didn't you keep your promise? Fuck. You're still harping on this issue at this time. Looks like you're even more stupid than I am. Bear Mountain shouted in astonishment. Chapter 1142. Decabu Shang was already on his last breath. His eyes were still wide open as he asked with difficulty, You? Why didn't you keep your promise? Big Bear stared at him for a moment. Suddenly, with a huge sound, he stabbed the broadsword into the ground and smashed Decabu Shang's broken body onto a large rock. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Then, he raised the broadsword and smashed it down with the back of the broadsword. After smashing a few dozen times, he scolded, How did I go back on my word? Wasn't I keeping my promise with you? Wasn't this a one-on-one fight? Keep your promise. Keep your promise. Keep your granny. Keep your granny. Keep your whole family. After smashing the back of the saber several dozen times, this trustworthy strange race man had already turned into a pile of meat paste. Bear Mountain spat on the ground and said resentfully, Do you think I'm really sick in the head to keep my promise with trash like you? Fuck your grandpa. Do you think I'm an idiot, Pooey? Our king is mighty. The Bear Tribe warriors looked at this shameless king with sincere admiration, and flattered him with different thoughts in their minds. What are you shouting for? Hurry up and continue killing. What bullsh*t trust? On the battlefield, they're still talking about bullsh*t trust with their enemies. The brains of these two-headed bastards are really. Bear Mountain rolled his eyes and scolded. When this fellow was in his mother's womb, his mother must have fallen, and not just once. Otherwise, this fellow wouldn't be so retarded. This is a congenital retardation. His granny, he's really one of a kind. A few bear warriors had their mouths crooked and eyes slanted as they dragged their blades and ran towards the other side of the battlefield. Bear Mountain laughed smugly, but was suddenly dumbfounded, because he could clearly hear the angry scolding of the bear warriors from the other side of the battlefield. When you were in your mother's womb, did your mother fall? One of the strange races actually replied in a daze, What? What, your grandpa? From the looks of it, she really did fall. Following that was a series of screams. Bear Mountain's face darkened. It didn't take long for the entire battlefield to become a stage for the Bear Tribe warriors to display their majestic voices. Loud roars filled the air. The only pity was that their lines were rather monotonous, all of them saying the same thing, Has your mother ever fallen? Every shout was accompanied by a ferocious slash of the saber. Following that, a series of screams rang out incessantly. In the end, it evolved into, Have you ever fallen? Have you ever fallen? Have you fallen before? The Bear Tribe warriors were cursing excitedly, fighting in high spirits. The king was a king. This line of cursing was both satisfying and cathartic. Along the way, as they cursed and killed, the battle strength of their side actually rose by a few levels out of nowhere. It felt so good. How satisfying. With a swoosh, the Eagle King flapped his wings, causing the blood on his wings to fly out. He had already arrived at Big Bear's side, and with a single slash of his blade he killed 5 or 6 of the strange races. At the same time he asked curiously, "Fourth brother, what did you say just now? What have you ever fallen? What do you mean? Why can't I figure it out even now?" "Fall your goddamn head." Scram. Bear Mountain didn't feel the slightest bit happy or proud. Those fellows in his tribe had really thrown his face away. He didn't know which brat had spread this vulgarity, but it had actually spread from 1 to 10, 10 to 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 to 3,000. It was fine if it was something good, but it was obviously stupid words that damaged his heroic image. It was too damaging to this king's image. He must be punished severely after the battle. But then again, there wasn't a single vulgar word in brother-in-law's scolding. It's worth learning. Just as he was feeling gloomy, he heard the Eagle King coming over to join in the fun. How could he give him a good attitude? He glared at him fiercely, turned his waist, and left this gossipy fellow behind, howling and waving his arms and legs as he charged forward. Did I offend you? Why are you scolding me as well? How fucking unlucky." The Eagle King was stunned for a moment, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Then he chased after them to kill the enemies. There were about 30 to 40,000 strange races, so the number of strange races was naturally not small. But the actual battle strength of Tion Fa's soldiers was undoubtedly several times higher than theirs. Under the cooperation of the Eagle and Bear clan soldiers, the number of strange races was decreasing rapidly, like boiling water splashing on snow or melting ice under the blazing sun. However, the two sides had only clashed for less than a quarter of an hour when hundreds of Tion Fa's soldiers began to show signs of injuries. Among them, there were even dozens who were gravely injured and had no choice but to consume heaven reversal pills to recover their strength. Then, they continued to kill the enemy. The effects of the heaven reversal pill were truly amazing. No matter what kind of injuries or exhaustion, as long as one was still breathing, one pill would allow one to recover to their peak condition within 10 breaths. Furthermore, there were no side effects at all. Such a miraculous medicine was truly rare. If there was a flaw in this medicine, it would be that it could only be consumed for a long period of time. Within a month's time, one could only consume one pill. Within this time limit, if one were to consume it repeatedly, not only would the effects decrease, it would have no effect at all. One had to wait for a month's time for the body to complete a small cycle and completely remove all the effects of the medicine. Only then would the second pill be effective again. Speaking of which, this was also the flaw that Jun Dashao had always felt was a flaw in this medicine. Otherwise, wouldn't they be able to kill the enemy endlessly if they gave each of the high-ranking soldiers 100 pills? Then would there still be any suspense in the war for seizing the heavens? What problem in the world could not be solved? But in reality, such a good thing did not exist. No matter how miraculous a medicine was, it would definitely have its limitations. Right now, there were only a few thousand strange races soldiers left on the battlefield, and they were still resisting stubbornly. More than 90% of them had already lost their lives under the butcher's knives of the Eagle-Bear alliance, turning into meat paste on the ground. Kill. The Battle of the Divine Sun. Our goal is to seize the heavens. The Xian continent will ultimately belong to the Divine Sun race. A loud and terrifying voice suddenly rang out in the sky above the battlefield. A figure had already arrived above the battlefield like a gust of wind. This voice could be said to be eerie and terrifying, and there seemed to be a strange rhythm to it. It was the supremacy enduring heavens who had spoken earlier, the leader of the strange races who had just arrived. And the madness of the strange races was also because of a single sentence from this person. This person held supreme authority in this entire territory of the strange races. Following this loud roar, the figure of the strange race's leader had already dived down towards the ground. Before he landed on the ground, the saber light had already arrived. The soaring saber light swept through the void and descended like a rainbow. Several Bear Clan warriors let out long and miserable cries. They had already been injured by this saber. Over a distance of 10 zhang, just the saber chi alone was enough to heavily injure a saint. This level of cultivation was clearly at the level of a saint venerable. Following that, another 12 figures appeared in the sky. In just a flash, they had already dived down with a sinister smile on their faces like demonic gods. A cold light shone in their hands. That was the blade of enduring heavens. Like a bloodthirsty demon, it opened its mouth wide and revealed its sharp fangs. The blade of enduring heavens represented slaughter. It represented destruction. If they really landed on the ground, the Eagle and Bear tribe soldiers of Tion-Fa would definitely have to endure the destructive attacks. The strength of a single person might not be enough to turn the entire situation around. But if more than 10 Saint Venerables joined hands, it would definitely be enough to turn the tables around. Furthermore, even if they disregarded these 13 experts, there were still hundreds of Frenzy Blade enduring Earths arriving on the battlefield. At this moment, the strength of Tion-Fa's side was clearly not enough when compared to the strength of the strange races. However, it would take at least 6 hours for the second wave of reinforcements to arrive here. What was even more tragic was that during this period of time, the strange races would definitely continue to send reinforcements. Even if one didn't talk about the future, just based on the current strength, the battle that the Eagle and Bear Alliance was about to face had already reached a critical juncture. Tion-Fa Eternal Heavens. Just at this time, one of the Bear tribe warriors who had already consumed the Heaven Reversal Pill leapt up with a howl, reverting to his original form in midair. Baring his teeth, he roared savagely and exploded forth with his strongest strength, slashing towards the Supremacy Enduring Heavens that was about to descend from the sky. That Supremacy Enduring Heavens sneered coldly and said in a disdainful voice, "A grain of rice dares to shine." The saber slashed out unhurriedly, and with a loud clang, the saber flew out of the Bear tribe soldier's hand, turning into metal shards in midair. But that Bear tribe soldier was clearly prepared to fight with his life on the line. When he leapt up, he had already used all his strength. Although the saber flew out of his hand, his huge body still maintained the momentum of charging forward. The huge bear head that had reverted to its original form laughed savagely, opening its fan-like paws and grabbing towards the Supremacy Enduring Heavens in midair. Schwa, schwa, schwa. 3 sabers flashed past, and a thick arm and right leg flew out of the Bear tribe soldier's body, fresh blood splattering everywhere. But he continued to howl and approach this Supremacy Enduring Heavens with all his might. The Tion-Fa, the Bear tribe soldier roared hysterically, using his remaining left hand to grab the saber that had pierced through his chest. With a maniacal laugh, his entire body exploded. In an instant, he turned into a sky full of meat shards. Such a violent explosion actually cleared out the surrounding tens of zhang. Many strange races who could not dodge in time were struck by the meat shards and were heavily injured. The Supremacy Enduring Heavens at the center of the explosion also let out an angry grunt, unable to control his body that was still in midair and sent flying by the powerful force of the explosion. This Supremacy Enduring Heavens had already reached the Saint Venerable realm. Although the self-destruction of a Saint realm expert could make him look pathetic, it was not enough to injure him. Chapter 1143. Today's second update. The next update was a patch. But the Bear tribe warrior who self-detonated also understood the disparity in strength between him and the enemy before him. He had never thought that he could perish together with the enemy. His intention was only to use his self-detonation to buy some time, to use the last of his strength to stop the enemy, so that his brothers could be prepared and kill as many enemies as possible. Using his own life, his own soul, to explode into a ball of energy, to block this killing god outside. Even if it was only for a second, then his sacrifice would be worth it. Or perhaps it would be that he had bought a second for his comrades, so that his companions could have some time to prepare. Because the moment a Saint Venerable expert like this fell into the dense crowd of Tion-Fa warriors, the destruction it could cause would definitely be devastating. Many of his companions might not even have the time to take the Heaven Reversal Pill before they were killed. And he had already taken the Heaven Reversal Pill before. He had already died once. His life had been picked up by the skin of his teeth. To be able to fight for a chance of survival for his companions, it was already worth it. Big Black, seeing his own brothers courting death, Bear Mountain's eyes were bloodshot, as if blood was about to flow out. Dragging his saber, he charged in that direction without a care for his life. Everywhere he passed, it was like a huge ship sailing across the water, creating two waves of blood. Get into formation. Everyone, get into formation. Don't panic. Get into formation and slaughter these bastards. Take revenge for our brothers. Eagle King roared, his voice piercing through the 9 heavens. Just from his voice alone, it wasn't hard to imagine that he was so furious that he was about to spit out a mouthful of blood. Revenge! Revenge! Following the sacrifice of this bear tribe warrior, the ferocious nature of all the Tian Fa warriors present was ignited, and Eagle King also made the most correct choice at this moment. Get into formation. The 10 sides ambush formation that brother-in-law had imparted to him. Every 10 people would form an independent group. And this little bit of time to get into formation was bought by that Tian Fa bear tribe warrior's sacrifice. Although it was just that little bit of time. But without that buffer, before the formation could even take shape, they would have already been annihilated. No matter how powerful the array was, as long as it wasn't fully formed, it was nothing. It was also at this moment that an abnormally sharp whistling sound rang out once more. Like a sharp sword cutting through the heavens, it shot towards the retreating supremacy enduring heavens. That supremacy enduring heavens who was sent flying by the explosion was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Previously, he had rushed all the way here, and even before he arrived, he had ordered the sea of warriors to surround and attack the enemy to deplete their strength and break their formation. He had sacrificed nearly 30 to 40,000 men, all so that he could charge into the enemy's battle formation in one fell swoop. With the momentum of the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves, he led the 100,000-strong army behind him into the Xian continent. Build the first stronghold of the strange races in the Xian continent, and guard this road that was no longer threatened by the volcano. As long as they waited for the large army of their clansmen to arrive, they would have the greatest opportunity to conquer the Xian continent. He was completely confident that 40 to 50,000 men against Tian Fa's warriors. Although there was no chance of victory due to the strength of Tian Fa's warriors. But with the advantage of numbers, they would definitely be able to disrupt the enemy's formation. That was all he wanted. Even an expert like him wouldn't have the ability to break through the formation of an army in a proper formation. Even a Saint Monarch could not underestimate the battle strength of thousands of experts. But as long as the basic formation was disrupted, he could find a gap and take advantage of the chaos to obtain the greatest results with the least expenditure. As for the 40 to 50,000 clansmen from before, they were just cannon fodder in his eyes. If they died, then so be it. As long as there was a price to pay for their deaths, and their deaths had value, then so what if another 40 to 50,000 died? But he had never expected that his wishful thinking, which had been so close to success, would be foiled by a mere saint-level bear warrior at the final and most crucial moment. This damned black bear was actually able to resolutely use such an extreme method like self-detonation at the first moment, successfully stopping him from moving forward, causing a flaw in his perfect plan and causing it to completely collapse. How could a high and mighty supremacy enduring heavens like him accept such an outcome? But that was not important. As the saying goes, when one plan fails, another will appear. From the battle in front of him, he could tell that although Tian Fa's side was strong, they did not have any experts of a sufficient level to hold the fort here. As long as he and the rest of the supremacy enduring heavens charged forward together, victory would still be his. At most, he would just have to expend a little more energy. Thinking of this supremacy enduring heavens finally felt a little more comfortable. That stinky bear, no matter how many tricks he had up his sleeves, could only stop his advance for a moment. A fool will always be a fool. But just as he was about to fly back and link up with the rest of the supremacy enduring heavens, an extremely sharp gust of wind suddenly tore through the air. In that instant, his body actually could not move. This supremacy enduring heavens was shocked. Life spatial lock. These 5 words were practically shouted out with a trembling voice. This was a type of spatial lock that only Saint Venerables could use. At the same time, it was the most tyrannical and dangerous type. This technique was to ignite one's own life force to completely communicate with the heavens and earth, and then completely seal the space that one wanted to seal. This kind of technique was undoubtedly the most effective when used for a sneak attack. If the other party was prepared, it would all be useless. Because as an expert of the same level, no one would foolishly stand there and let you seal them. But right now, this supremacy enduring heavens was in a situation where he was completely defenseless. That supremacy enduring heavens had already carefully inspected the entire battlefield, and the other party clearly did not have a Saint Venerable expert. Why did one of them suddenly appear at such a critical moment? Daochuan, how have you been? A cold voice filled with killing intent rang out. A person suddenly appeared in front of him. This person was holding a long saber that gleamed with a cold light. It was Saint Venerable Lu. As he spoke, he did not stop as the long saber in his hand slashed down. He didn't give this supremacy enduring heavens any time to react. His eyes were cold and merciless. Daochuan, I wonder if your holy infant can escape from this life spatial lock that I've set up? This supremacy enduring heavens was called Daochuan Kinju. In the previous war for seizing the heavens, Saint Venerable Lu had met him before. Thus, they recognized each other. It's actually you, you damned dear. Tyrant Jew. You actually dared to sneak attack me while I'm down. Daochuan Kinju naturally recognized this old opponent from 500 years ago. He screamed in horror, but it was already too late to be angry. He suddenly gritted his teeth and shouted decisively, Enduring Heaven's doppelganger body mutilation technique. With a pew sound, a round pillar of blood spurted out of his mouth, and his hair all stood on end. His face also turned pale, without the slightest hint of blood. But his aura suddenly became berserk at this moment. His Xian Qi at this moment also increased by at least 3 times. Under the impact of such a powerful force, it seemed like he could break through the life spatial lock that Saint Venerable Lu had set up at any time. The Enduring Heavens doppelganger body mutilation technique was a desperate move of the strange races. Once it was activated, it could instantly increase one's strength by 3 times. It was used to kill the enemy. But after that, one's internal organs would definitely be damaged, or even lose their functions. It would require a long period of recuperation to recover. But now, Daochuan Kinju was not doing this to kill the enemy, but to break free from this life spatial lock. Other than this kind of self-mutilation technique, he could not think of a second way to tear apart the life spatial lock set up by a Saint Venerable of the same level. He had no other choice. But Saint Venerable Lu's saber still slashed down mercilessly. Daochuan Kinju used all his strength to turn his head, and with a swoosh, the saber slashed into Daochuan Kinju's shoulder. 2 bodies slashed in at the same time. But because their backs were facing each other, the place where the saber struck was the left shoulder and the right shoulder. Daochuan Kinju used the secret technique of the strange races to temporarily raise his own cultivation, and was indeed much stronger than Saint Venerable Lu. The strength of his body had also increased by 3 times at the same time. The saber that was originally enough to split him into 2, in the end, did not manage to directly split him into 2. But this saber still managed to achieve a very impressive result. Starting from the shoulder, the wound extended all the way to the chest, almost all the way to the lower abdomen. The saber qi surged in, and Daochuan Kinju's internal organs were almost instantly turned into a pile of mush. The 2 sets of internal organs in Daochuan Kinju's body were almost completely exposed, steaming hot. There were also many pieces of organs and flesh that had already been smashed, falling down continuously. Daochuan Kinju's 2 mouths screamed at the same time. A male voice, a female voice, screamed at the same time. The screams were so tragic that it did not sound like a human's voice. There was a sudden pause, and a large amount of blood suddenly spurted out. Tyrant! The heavily injured Daochuan Kinju's 4 eyes shone with a murderous light. Obviously, he had already fallen into a state of complete madness. With the large amount of blood spurting out, although his body had already suffered a fatal injury, But his enduring heaven doppelganger great technique still allowed his aura to maintain a terrifying rising state. Purring! A crisp sound rang out, and cracks appeared in the space that was supposed to be completely silent. It was as if something invisible had suddenly exploded in the air. Saint Venerable Lu immediately grunted and spat out a mouthful of blood, his face pale. Chapter 1144. Facing such a powerful attack, Saint Venerable Lu's life force and soul power were shaken at the same time, and his injuries were not light. But he still did not retreat. At the last moment when Daochuan Kenju was about to break free from the spatial shackles, his saber was raised high once again. This time, the saber actually emitted a brilliant white saber chi. This was the Xian Chi Saber Chi Saber Chi. This was a strange power that could only appear when the saber techniques of the Xian continent were used to the extreme. And this kind of power was enough to completely destroy the holy infant's soul under this saber aura. Similar to the life spatial shackles, this was also an attack that burned one's life force and soul power. Saint Venerable Lu had used a desperate attack. Because he knew that as long as he showed the slightest bit of mercy, this supremacy enduring heavens could escape in the next moment. Although his sneak attack this time had succeeded in heavily injuring him, and even used his powerful saber chi to directly destroy his 5 viscera and 6 bowels, to a double Saint Venerable supremacy enduring heavens. Although these injuries were heavy, it was not enough to take his life. As long as he was given a period of time to recuperate, he would be able to completely recover, and his strength would not be affected in the slightest. The regenerative ability of a Saint Venerable was already a synonym for terror, far beyond what ordinary people could imagine. As long as his head was still on his neck, even if the rest of his body was destroyed, he still had a chance to recover. This was the true terrifying ability of a Saint Venerable, an almost undying body. So he had to strike while the iron was hot. Only by completely killing this fellow in one go could he settle this once and for all. And now, I have already taken the absolute initiative. This is the best chance to kill the enemy in one fell swoop. Daochuan Kenju roared angrily, his internal organs were almost completely exposed, trembling weakly as he roared. His 4 eyes were all bloodshot. He had already determined that this Saint Venerable Lu was clearly planning to perish together with him. But in the current situation, because the opponent's sneak attack had succeeded, the first slash had already destroyed his internal organs. Even if he wanted to use the stealth kill technique, he was already powerless to do so. If he could not kill the opponent, he would really have to die here. Even though he was a double Saint Venerable, if the other party continued to pester him like this, only death awaited him. Not to mention the fact that he was already heavily injured. If he kept running away, he wouldn't be able to keep up with his opponent's speed, and he definitely wouldn't be able to shake him off. Thinking about this, Daochuan Kenju became determined. If I'm destined to die, then you'll die with me. With a sharp howl, the 2 long sabers charged toward Saint Venerable Lu's side viciously. The tip of the saber was also filled with blazing white Xian Chi saber aura. At this moment, the 2 of them had the same idea. If I'm going to kill you, I'll kill you until your body and soul are completely destroyed. Show no mercy. As the 3 long sabers clashed fiercely, the 2's faces became paler and paler. Both sides were burning their life force and soul force. No one could relax. Saint Venerable Lu laughed heartily. Suddenly, with a flash, he appeared at the side of Daochuan Kenju's body. With a swing of his saber, he resolutely slashed down. Daochuan Kenju laughed coldly in his heart as he attacked with both his blades. One pierced towards Saint Venerable Lu's Danan, the other towards his heart. This was attacking the enemy's vital points. As he had 2 bodies, attacking at the same time, the momentum of this attack was even sharper than Saint Venerable Lu's attack. Daochuan Kenju was sure that Saint Venerable Lu would not fight head-on. Because his injuries were extremely heavy, he could be said to be in a precarious situation. Although Saint Venerable Lu had also expended a lot of his life force and soul force to use the life spatial lock, his situation was definitely better than his. Now, the method of perishing together was definitely not worth it for Saint Venerable Lu. Even if Saint Venerable Lu had the intention to perish together with him from the start, but now he was definitely not willing to do so, because he already had the absolute advantage. And in a battle between Saint Venerable experts, as long as one side retreated, the other side would definitely have the opportunity to flee far away, even if the space was already sealed by Saint Venerable Lu. But he had miscalculated. One wrong move and the whole game was lost. Facing the two sabers that were coming at him fiercely, not only did Saint Venerable Lu not dodge, he instead let out a long howl and pushed his chest forward. The saber in his hand also increased in strength because of this. At this moment, all of Saint Venerable Lu's cultivation was gathered on the long saber. The Xianqi saber aura on the long saber was so intense that it was almost burning. Daochuan Kenju cried out in panic. In the instant that his two sabers were about to hit Saint Venerable Lu, he finally understood that his judgment was wrong. The other party actually made it clear that he wanted to perish together with him. His futile attempt to exchange injuries with him and force him to retreat was actually completely meaningless. With this thought, how could he still care about attacking the opponent? In his heart, there was only the thought of quickly retreating for his life. Saint Venerable Lu continued forward. That saber still did not change. Chi! The sharp saber in the hands of Daochuan Kenju's female body ruthlessly stabbed into Saint Venerable Lu's chest, where his heart was, accurately and without error. Then, with another chi, the other saber also stabbed into Saint Venerable Lu's dantian, similarly accurately and without error. These two sabers stabbed in almost at the same time, but there was not the slightest bit of obstruction, as if they were cutting into pork. With a swoosh, they directly pierced through. Xian Qi exploded in Saint Venerable Lu's body. With a bang, a thin mist of blood emerged from all the pores on Saint Venerable Lu's body at the same time. At this moment, Saint Venerable Lu did not even leave a single drop of energy to protect his body. All of his energy, without reservation, had already been completely channeled into the huge saber in his hands. And Saint Venerable Lu's body, at the moment of being struck by the saber, had already leapt into Daochuan Kenju's embrace. The long saber that was suffused with a blazing white Xianqi saber aura ruthlessly slashed down from the point where the two of them were connected. Swoosh! The two bodies were split into two by the saber. The three bodies, almost at the same time, spun and fell from the sky, perishing together. The two bodies of Daochuan Kenju, as they spun, finally looked at each other face to face. They both smiled bitterly. Just a moment ago, the endless ruthlessness had actually disappeared without a trace. So, to look at each other without any restraint, it actually feels so comfortable. The female body of Daochuan Kenju smiled bitterly. There was no ruthlessness in her eyes, no hysteria. There was actually gentleness, a gentleness that belonged to a woman. The male body of Daochuan Kenju also had a gentle smile on his face as he slowly descended from the sky. His eyes, however, were fixed on the face of the female body. In his eyes, there was actually gentleness as well. If there is a next life, we will definitely be human, and we will look at each other and spend our lives together. The female body seemed to have blushed, a little shy, but she gently stretched out her small hand. The male body of Daochuan Kenju laughed heartily. He stretched out his large hand and held the hand of the other half of his body tightly. The two of them closed their eyes at the same time, and just like that, they breathed their last. Under the Xianqi saber aura of Saint Venerable Lu, Daochuan Kenju was already unable to hold on. He did not even have the time to condense his holy infant, and his soul was directly severed, completely disappearing from the world. Although at the last moment of their lives, they still longed for the next life to depend on each other. But in reality, they were completely clear that their souls and primordial spirits had already been completely destroyed by Saint Venerable Lu's tyrannical Xianqi saber aura. They were destined to not have a next life. But before they died, to be able to hold each other's hands without any shackles, they were already satisfied. They had no more regrets. This instant was already an eternity. Whether there was a next life or not, what did it matter anymore? These two strange races were husband and wife, as well as brother and sister. Under such a rebellious relationship, the relationship between the male and female bodies of Daochuan Kenju was actually so deep. Until their deaths, they did not even look at Saint Venerable Lu again. Since he was already destined to die, and even his soul was going to turn into nothingness in a moment, then whether others lived or died, what did it have to do with him? As for hatred, dreams, hopes, all of these, to people who had no future, no hope, were they still important? They were really not important anymore. And in the instant that Saint Venerable Lu confirmed that the other party had been struck by the saber aura, he had swallowed that heaven reversal pill. He also did not look at Daochuan Kenju again. The other party had been struck by his full power, a strike that was equivalent to perishing together with him. That would be unreasonable. Since the other party was already destined to die, what was the point of looking at a corpse? If he had the time, he should hurry and kill the enemy. So the moment Saint Venerable Lu recovered, he immediately sprang up and flew towards where the other supremacy enduring heavens were. In fact, he did not even turn back, only leaving behind a sigh. He had come here to put his life on the line. Coming here this time, he did not even think of returning to Tian Fa alive. In that case, what was life and death? It didn't matter anymore. It really didn't matter anymore. His only wish was to drag as many strange races down with him as possible before he died. As for whether they were good or bad people, was this important? So what if they were good people? So what if they were bad people? This was war. This was a war between two continents. There was no right or wrong in war. There were only soldiers and the things that they wanted to protect. The things that they viewed as important as their lives were the things that the other party wanted to destroy with all their might. And everything that was born from this foundation could only be a matter of life and death. It was that simple. That was all. In another direction, the 7 strange races' supremacy enduring heavens had also been intercepted by 7 Tian Fa Saint Venerables. Then, it was naturally a life and death battle. In a battle between experts, life and death was decided in an instant. 3 of them had already finished their battles, and the victor and the loser had already been decided. On Tian Fa's side, there were 2 Saint Venerables who were heavily injured. After consuming the heaven reversal pill, they were now fighting a new opponent. And the other Tian Fa's Saint Venerable was in a miserable state. In the end, he did not even have the chance to consume the heaven reversal pill before he perished together with his opponent. Seeing that the other party had reacted in time, causing his sneak attack to fail and forcing him to fight head-on, at the crucial moment when he was at an absolute disadvantage, this Saint Venerable decisively chose to self-detonate. In the end, he dragged the strange race's supremacy enduring heavens along with him, roaming the Yellow Springs. Such a choice. Although he did not profit, at least he did not lose out. Chapter 1145. This was because there were constantly experts who chose to detonate their own vitality when they were no match for their opponents and could not hold on any longer. Most of them were Tian Fa warriors, but there were also some strange races. This was a rarely seen scene of heroism. But today it was so common. It was as if the lives of both sides were no longer valuable. They didn't care about it as much as they thought they would in this fiery war, where one side had to live or the other had to live. Even the most cowardly coward had become a fearless warrior at this moment. Right now, the Tian Fa warriors had already gone completely crazy. Most of the people in the Eagle and Bear Alliance had already consumed the heaven reversal pill they brought with them. As Xian beasts, the violent emotions in them had been completely ignited. The blood in their bones was also displayed to the fullest in this battle. His comrades were constantly falling in front of him, and his brothers were constantly exploding in the air into fragments of blood that filled the sky. Such a strong stimulation had caused every single Tian Fa warrior present to lose all sense of reason. Right now, there was only the enemy in their eyes. They could only kill the enemy and take revenge for their brothers. At the same time, the 100,000-strong outsiders' army that had lagged behind had already surged forward like a tidal wave. Riding on those strangely shaped horses, they charged into this flesh-grinding plate-like battlefield. With their advantage in numbers, they completely drowned Tian Fa's Eagle and Bear alliance in the sea of people. And the battle between the supremacy enduring heavens was still going on in the sky. The remaining 5 Tian Fa Saint Venerables and the remaining 5 supremacy enduring heavens were engaged in a life and death battle. As for those 300 frenzy blade enduring earths, they let out shrill cries as they charged headfirst into the battlefield. Because of the addition of these frenzy blade enduring earths, who were second only to the supremacy enduring heavens, they caused huge casualties to the Tian Fa army. And a huge pressure. The balance of power between the two sides had completely tilted. Ever since this group of frenzy blade enduring earths entered the fray, the rate at which the Tian Fa army self-destructed increased. Right now, less than half of the 6,000 soldiers were still alive. Another loud explosion came from the sky, and the air currents from the explosion swirled violently, causing the volcano that was thousands of feet away to flicker a few times. Saint Venerable Lu's face revealed a trace of sadness. Without even looking, just by hearing such a loud sound, he already knew that another old brother had left him. Today, or perhaps the very next moment, he would chase after his old brother's footsteps. Embark on the final journey back home. But he believed it even more. Whether it was himself, his old brothers, every single warrior below, and even the descendants of Tian Fa who were bleeding and sacrificing their lives, none of them would regret it. Because this was the legacy of Tian Fa for 10,000 years. Just for Tian Fa, not for the continent. Even if I die, my will lives on. I will never regret. Eagle King howled madly, occasionally soaring into the sky to attack the enemies in the sky, and occasionally diving into the ground to slash with his sword. Although his saber was meticulously forged by Jun Moxie using the power of gold, it could not withstand such a long period of intense and crazy slashing. It had already turned into dust long ago. Right now, the sword in his hand was already the 4th weapon he had changed. He had even forgotten who he had snatched it from. Eagle King had also consumed the Heaven Reversal Pill a long time ago. Right now, there were more than 10 new wounds on his body, and some of them were so deep that his bones could be seen. But he seemed to not feel it at all, continuing to charge forward crazily, sweeping through the sky and on the ground, as fast as a shooting star. Only Bear King, Bear Mountain, was still waving his 1,600 gene long and heavy saber. But this huge saber had already turned into a huge saw. The edge of the saber was full of nicks. As if he didn't know fatigue, that huge body of his stood out like a crane among a flock of chickens. At this moment, the super strong defense of the Bear tribe was on full display. Bear King's imposing manner of holding the fort alone was a huge role model for the Tian Fa warriors. Every time a Tian Fa soldier felt tired and their limbs were sore from all the killing, they only needed to open their eyes to see that Bear King's huge body was still standing upright, still fighting bravely, still roaring like thunder, not showing the slightest sign of fatigue. At that time, everyone would feel as if there was an extra surge of strength supporting them from within their bodies. And so, they continued to pick up their weapons, continue to fight, continue to slaughter the strange races. This effect of Bear King was something that other Beast Kings did not have. Because Bear King was an existence that was born for battle. That huge body was like a god of war. And this time, none of the hell-enduring ghosts and frenzy blade enduring earths dared to use stealth tactics. The battle before them was not a one-on-one war for seizing the heavens. If they were invisible, their enemies would not be able to see them, but their own people would also not be able to see them. On the battlefield, be it friend or foe, everyone's eyes had already turned red from killing. There was only one thought left in their minds. If it wasn't me, it would be the enemy. If they really used stealth, they would definitely not be able to avoid the dense rain of swords and sabers. That would be akin to playing with their lives. Therefore, no matter how unwilling he was, he could only give up on this heaven-defying killer move that could turn the tide of a battle in any one-on-one battle, and engage in a real battle royale with his opponent. In midair, Saint Venerable Lu laughed loudly. Dragging his injured body, he charged towards a strange race's supremacy enduring heavens in front of him. His right leg had already disappeared at some point in time. As to who it was that had chopped it off, it was no longer important to Saint Venerable Lu. On the other side, the strange races also roared savagely. Their eyes were also filled with despair and craziness, and they similarly counterattacked. The 13 of them had come out together to obtain the number 1 battle merit. A total of 13 supremacy enduring heavens. What kind of a powerful force was this? But they had been ambushed here, and it was an ambush from Tian Fa Saint Venerable. If it was an ambush from the 3 Holy Lands, they were confident that they would be able to survive it. But these Tian Fa Saint Venerable seniors, although they were fighting in human form, they were still a bunch of Xian beasts in their bones. Xian beast kings, and all of them had reached the level of Saint Venerable. Whether it was in terms of defense or offense, they were all stronger than the humans from the 3 Holy Lands. After this huge battle, the 13 brothers on his side were only left with 2. And all of them were riddled with injuries, and their strength was greatly reduced. Although the 8 Saint Venerables on the other side were only left with 2, and they looked to be in a worse state than his side, but this supremacy enduring heavens still wanted to cry but had no tears. 13 against 8, and each of them had the strength of 2 Saint Venerables. Their combined strength was almost 3 times that of the other side. But in the end, this was the outcome? Before they came out, no one would have expected such a result. He pounced viciously towards Saint Venerable Lu. This supremacy enduring heavens could already tell that this hateful old deer was most likely the leader of the Tian Fa Saint Venerables. All the schemes in front of him were probably planned by him. And because of this hateful beast, his 11 brothers had been completely annihilated right in front of him. Even the chance to reincarnate was completely gone. Even if he died, he would definitely drag this hateful old deer down with him. Saint Venerable Lu's action of pouncing over was exactly what he wanted. Including this person in front of him, he had already killed a total of 3 supremacy enduring heavens from the other side. It was truly too much. Even if he died, he could die in peace. The 2 of them gritted their teeth as they closed in on each other. Their eyes were filled with the same kind of madness and determination. At this moment, the 2 of them no longer had any weapons in their hands. No matter how sturdy a weapon was, it would shatter under the fierce clash of Saint Venerables. The 2 of them charged forward barehanded just like that. Just as their bodies were about to make contact, the 2 of them did the exact same thing, self-destruct. With a loud boom, the 2 of them collided. Following that, there was an earth-shattering tremor. These 2 Saint Venerables had ignited their remaining life force and soul power at the same time. The 2 of them did not intend to return alive. Fearing that the other party would not die, they did not even hold back the energy of their holy infant reincarnation. At the same time, they released the most dazzling fireworks in the sky. This was the last time the soul power of the 2 of them would release the most dazzling light on this continent. With a loud bang, an unprecedentedly violent explosion occurred, clearing out the area within a radius of several hundred zhang below the ground. Close to 10,000 warriors of both sides were sent flying in all directions like rubber balls. Among them, there were many unlucky ones who bore the brunt of the explosion and were directly turned into minced meat by the air currents of the explosion. Then, they were sent flying into the distance. Big brother! Saint Venerable Bear roared as if he was about to cry. All of a sudden, his mind went blank. 8 old brothers, gathered together for 2,000 years. From birth, they had fought together, grown up together, consumed the 1,000 poisons and 10,000 evil fruit to break through to the spirit Xian realm, journeying together, participating in 2 war for seizing the heavens, fighting against the 9 serenities and 14 masters, and then being sealed in the 9 nether realms at the same time, living together day and night. The 8 of them had roamed the world together when they were young. How high-spirited and spirited had they been? How resounding was the reputation of the 8 saints of Tian Fa? Who in the world would dare to look them in the eye? If one of their brothers was bullied or wronged, the 8 of them would definitely fight together. Right now, apart from himself, The other 7 brothers had all been turned into nothingness in this battle. Dead without a complete corpse. From young to old, how could they part? How could they part? I can't bear to part. Even if there's only the road to the yellow springs in front of me, even if I return to nothingness, I will still accompany my brothers. If someone bullies them, I will still act at any time. I will use my life to protect them. No matter where, no matter if it's my body or my soul. Saint Venerable Bear turned his head fiercely and glared at the last remaining supremacy enduring heavens. His eyes were bloodshot, and his face was twisted. Come over, Saint Venerable Bear said expressionlessly. Hurry up. Don't delay my reunion time with my brothers. As he said the word brothers, his eyes turned distant and blazing. The faces of the 7 brothers appeared in front of Saint Venerable Bear one by one before disappearing into the distance. Saint Venerable Bear seemed to feel the departure of his brothers, and an intense pain surged in his heart. All of a sudden, he roared, "Wait for me!" Just like back when he was roaming the pugilistic world, when his brothers had played a prank on him and left him behind, that kind of anxious cry. It was still the same feelings from back then. Brothers, wait for me. Together. No matter what. No matter life or death. Together. Chapter 1146. A strange smile appeared on the face of that supremacy enduring heavens. It was a smile that was filled with understanding. He said, "Old Bear, don't separate us?" The originally strange and noisy voice became extremely clear and melodious at this moment. And the female supremacy enduring heavens did not say a word, but her eyes were burning. Burning and gentle. Saint Venerable Bear's eyes flashed and he said lightly, "You will not separate. We will not separate. My brothers are waiting for me. I don't want them to wait for too long. We are of the same mind. Aren't my brothers also waiting for me?" This supremacy enduring heavens laughed pitifully as he looked at the blood mist in front of him with a desolate and empty look in his eyes. "Don't think that you're the only one with brothers. Old Bearca, let's go together." This supremacy enduring heavens had just finished speaking when he charged over crazily. 10,000 ancient. At this moment, Saint Venerable Bear's fierce cry shook the heavens and earth. Then his majestic body, which was riddled with scars, charged forward. His footsteps were resolute, and he did not turn back. There was no trace of longing. He was shouting in his heart, "Brothers, wait for me. Whether it's a mountain of blades or a sea of flames, this old bear will walk with you." Boo! On the ground, the charging Bear King and Bear Mountain suddenly let out a loud roar as they faced the sky, their faces filled with tears. Tears of blood. In the instant that an unusually brilliant spark erupted in the sky, a volcano in the distance suddenly spewed out a pillar of fire that soared into the sky with a boom. This sudden violent sound and violent explosion actually caused the entire ground to shake and flicker. And on the battlefield, both sides felt as if they were on a ship that had encountered a tsunami. Everyone raised their eyes at the same time and looked towards the north. They saw that in the distance, there was a volcano erupting, and a pillar of fire that was absolutely greater than any other volcano's eruption had ever erupted. It shot into the sky for thousands of meters. They were clearly hundreds of li away, but everyone could see it clearly. At this time, it was when Jun Moxie and Gu Han knocked Zhan Luanhui into the volcano, and Zhan Luanhui rushed out. Zhan Luanhui's fall had triggered the most intense eruption since the eruption of the volcano. Ho! Bear Mountain raised his head and let out a long howl. Saint Venerable Bear's sacrifice had caused Bear King to completely lose his last bit of rationality. "You damned bastards! Go to hell, hurry up and die." Bear Mountain's eyes were bloodshot, and the aura overflowing from his body was shockingly tyrannical to the extreme. Following a deafening roar, the muscles all over his body strangely bulged up, veins popping up all over his body. The originally abnormally huge Bear King's body suddenly expanded to twice its original size. Bear King's entire body seemed to be surrounded by a ring of black mist. It looked extremely illusory, but it was also clearly visible. This extreme contrast in vision shocked everyone who saw Bear King's strange transformation. A peculiar sound that sounded like the explosion of a soul rang out. This sound was not loud, like a very light explosion from the depths of one's soul. But in this battlefield where the sounds of battle and the sounds of volcano eruptions could be heard, this sound that should have been completely covered up was heard by everyone present. That was the sound of a being advancing. A sound that was above all mortals in this world. Bear Mountain's huge body once again burst out with a ball of golden mist. Before the golden mist could dissipate, his originally 3 zhang tall body had already swelled to almost 4 zhang, and in this instant he had doubled in size. From the looks of it, Bear King's body was at least 4 zhang tall. If one were to say that he was a long man earlier, he was now a standard giant. The clothes on his body that had already been stretched to their limits suddenly burst apart with a pa-pot sound. At this moment, Bear King's breath was like he was swallowing the heavens and earth. His body was 4 zhang tall, and his eyes were like bells. His face was twisted as he roared towards the sky. The weather changed. Bear King, Bear Mountain, under this extremely tragic series of blows, all the grief, anger, and hatred in his heart had been transformed into his own strength. At this critical moment, in this intense battle, he had actually stepped into the ranks of the 1st grade Saint Venerable from a 4th grade Holy Emperor. This could be said to be a great breakthrough. But it was also a breakthrough at an untimely time. Because right now, it could not be said to be a good time to deal with the heavenly tribulation. Around him, tens of strange races were raising their blades and slashing wildly at Bear Mountain's huge body. The target was simply too obvious, and it was extremely difficult to miss. However, the moment the blades landed on his body, they suddenly bounced back. The back of the blades smashed viciously onto the forehead and face of its original owner. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere, and a large number of people were thrown off their horses. After Bear King broke through in the midst of battle, his protective Xian Qi had naturally risen to the Saint Venerable level. Furthermore, because he had just broken through, he was still unable to control his Xian Qi as he wished. Thus, his Xian Qi was at its most violent state, and had nowhere to vent it out. Attacking the Bear King at this time was precisely giving the Berserk Xian Qi an outlet to vent, and the strange races would naturally suffer greatly. His entire body covered in wounds and blood, Eagle King stared at Bear King who had broken through, his heart wailing uncontrollably. "My dear brother, why did you break through at this time? Why did you break through at this time? No matter what time it would be much better than now, right? Because once he broke through, the lightning tribulation would definitely follow. Right now, the battle was at its most intense. How would he survive the lightning tribulation? What was even more terrifying was that the lightning tribulation did not care whether the people around you were friend or foe. It only counted by the number of people around you. This lightning tribulation's coverage was already terrifying. To what extent would it expand to? Eagle King, who had never known the word fear in his entire life, was actually completely numb at this moment. In the sky, as the wind and clouds surged, large patches of black clouds quickly gathered in this direction. A faint circle slowly formed in midair and rotated slowly. Although its momentum was slow, the pressure it exuded was incomparably strong. Bear King did not seem to care about that formless pressure at all. With a loud roar, he raised the sawtooth-like blade in his hand and charged forward crazily. What was the heavenly tribulation? Who cares what it was? At this moment, Bear Mountain did not even think about the heavenly tribulation. He did not even notice that he had actually broken through in the midst of battle. The Bear King at this moment was only filled with rage. To fight, to kill, to slash, to take revenge. Other than that, there was nothing else in his heart. Bear King's bloodshot eyes were filled with madness and brutality. There was nothing else. At this moment, Bear Mountain had already fallen into an extremely frenzied state. He believed that even if Eagle King was standing in front of him right now, he would not hesitate to slash at him with his blade. Big Bear strode forward like a shooting star, rushing towards the densest group of strange races. His rush was like a red-hot knife stabbing into butter, straight and easy. With his current cultivation of a Saint Venerable, charging in with all his might was naturally invincible and invincible. And the shocking regenerative ability of a Saint Venerable also opened up an almost inexhaustible source of motivation for Xiong Kaisen. On the battlefield, a total of 21 Saint Venerables from both sides had already turned into dust. Bear Mountain, who had just broken through, became the only Saint Venerable left on the battlefield. The strongest, most unparalleled existence. With a sweep of his blade, blood rained down from the sky, and a foul stench filled the air. This slaughter was even more spectacular than the previous one. Eagle King covered his eyes, unable to bear to watch any longer. As Bear Mountain's good brother for hundreds of years, how could he not see it? At this moment, fourth brother Bear had already gone completely berserk. He could not recognize anyone, be it himself, the warriors of the Bear tribe, or even if Big Sister came personally, she might not be able to call fourth brother back to his senses. Bear Mountain, whose strength had increased greatly, naturally would not be able to do anything to the strange races. But with the heavenly tribulation that was about to arrive, how could a person who had fallen into a berserk state survive it? Dozens of Frenzy Blade enduring Earths watched as Bear Mountain massacred their own tribesmen. They called out to each other and charged towards him at the same time. Although Bear King had already reached the Saint Venerable realm, and his strength had already surpassed the Frenzy Blade enduring Earths of the strange races, he had only broken through at the last moment, and his strength had not stabilized yet. With so many people gathered together, as long as they could surround Bear King, they did indeed have the strength to kill him. Kill. Bear Mountain waved his blade like a machine, and with each slash, an empty space was created. And the enemy's 50 or so Frenzy Blade enduring Earths had finally formed an encirclement. Everyone's eyes were filled with cruelty as they stared at Bear Mountain. Even if this person was already a Saint Venerable, with so many people surrounding him, they would definitely be able to kill him. With a loud roar from the leader, hundreds of sharp blades shot towards Bear Mountain in a deadly encirclement. Right at this time, the tribulation clouds in the sky had finally finished gathering, and the lightning tribulation was about to begin. With a loud crack of thunder, a bolt of lightning as thick as a bull's mouth struck down. The heavenly tribulation that Bear King faced after his breakthrough had actually arrived at such a critical moment. The most serious thing was that right now, Bear Mountain had completely lost his consciousness. Whatever heavenly tribulation, lightning tribulation, he had not even thought about it. In fact, Bear King did not even know that the sudden increase in strength in his body was due to his breakthrough. He only knew that it was good to have strength. With this new strength, he would be able to chop this bunch of trash apart one by one. Take revenge for Saint Venerable Bear. Take revenge for the 8 Saint Venerables. With a shrill cry, Bear Mountain was like an unstoppable tornado, charging straight into the Frenzy Blade enduring Earth's camp without any regard for his own safety. His eyes widened in anger, and the serrated blade in his hands turned into a raging dragon that could overturn rivers and seas. Chapter 1147. It was unknown whether this Frenzy Blade enduring Earth who was raising his blade and shouting loudly should feel honored or extremely unlucky. In any case, the first bolt of lightning from the heavenly tribulation that belonged to the Saint Venerable had been personally tasted by a second-grade Saint Emperor like him. The result was obvious. Before he could do anything, he had already turned into a pile of charcoal. As for the perpetrator, Bear Mountain, he was completely oblivious to what was happening not too far away. He was still laughing maniacally, howling madly, and roaring furiously. His sturdy body moved like a whirlwind, and his footsteps did not stop at all. His only thought was to use the saber in his hand to carve a path of blood through these 100,000 strange races, charging to the end, and then charging back from the other side, repeating the cycle over and over again, until all of them were killed. One could not help but admire Jun Dashao's craftsmanship. The saber in Bear Mountain's hands was the only weapon that could still be used in the Eagle-Bear alliance. Although the saber's edge was broken due to excessive slashing and clashing, the power of the saber was even more terrifying in such a densely packed battlefield. The thunder and lightning above his head sounded like concentrated firecrackers. The first lightning tribulation did not have any effect, as if it had angered the supreme dignity of the lightning tribulation. As if it had become angry out of humiliation, it actually sent out 3 lightning tribulations in a triangular shape. In a flash, the heavenly tribulation lit up the sky, and in the next moment, it had already touched the ground. Such a shocking speed caused everyone to be dumbfounded. But when the 3 bolts of lightning struck down, Bear Mountain had once again rushed out from his original position by 50 zhang. The Bear King, who was in an unintentional state, had actually unintentionally dodged the heavenly tribulation. A distance of 50 zhang was not considered far, but he had dodged the heavenly tribulation head-on. Behind him, there were more than a dozen frenzy blade enduring earths. They had just started their attack, but Bear Mountain had already rushed past them with a roar. Before they could even understand what had happened, the enemy had already disappeared, and 2 of their comrades had already been chopped into 8 pieces. What was going on now? It was a great humiliation. All of them turned around and chased after Bear Mountain's footsteps with bloodshot eyes. Seeing this fellow swinging his saber like a huge boat, reaping the lives of their own tribesmen in a frenzy, the frenzy blade enduring earths could only feel their blood rushing to their heads. Extreme humiliation. Even if the ones who died were ant-like existences that he had never paid any attention to, they were still his people. He could look down on them, but he would not allow others to trample on them. But right at this time, the 3 bolts of lightning tribulation descended, landing right in the middle of this group of people. With a bang, the 3 frenzied blade enduring earths that were the weakest among them instantly stiffened, and black smoke rose from their mouths as they fell to the ground. There were another 5 or 6 frenzied blade enduring earths that were directly paralyzed by the power of the lightning tribulation, and they were sent flying uncontrollably. Being sent flying did not mean that their lives were spared. These few frenzied blade enduring earths who had already lost all their strength were coincidentally chopped into splatters of blood by Eagle King, who had rushed over to help Bear King. On the ground, Big Bear had gone berserk, the Bear tribe had gone berserk, the Eagle tribe had gone berserk, all the remaining Tian Fa warriors had gone berserk, and the outsiders had also gone berserk, and in the sky, the heavenly tribulation had also gone crazy. Everyone present, regardless of which side, had gone crazy. The thunder tribulations were divided into groups of 3, and they struck down one after another like a sudden hailstorm. The frequency of the thunder tribulations was getting more and more intense, and there were actually groups of 6 and groups of 9. They followed behind Big Bear's body that was moving like a gale, fiercely striking, furiously striking, and continuously striking. Hundreds of bolts of lightning tribulation were unable to hit the person undergoing the tribulation. Such a strange thing was something that had never been seen in millions of years, even for a heavenly tribulation. We don't know if this heavenly tribulation thing has a consciousness, but if I was the heavenly tribulation, especially Lightning Bear Mountain's heavenly tribulation, it would definitely fly into a rage out of humiliation. Fuck, this daddy wasn't that good at dispelling people, and I dispelled wherever I wanted. Even if I was lucky enough to dodge a few bolts, it shouldn't be to the extent of not being able to dispel them all, right? What is this? Is there still any justice in this world? This sudden and strange change had actually caused Bear Mountain's killing power to increase by tens of times. Towards the end, it had increased by more than 100 times. At most, Bear King had only managed to carve out a path of blood, but the strange races that were following behind him were taken care of by the heavenly tribulation, because this fellow's unintentional movement speed was simply too fast. This sort of unconscious movement had long surpassed the limits of his mental strength, and allowed the heavenly tribulation to strike the strange races' heads. And the places that this fellow went, every single direction he chose was the most densely packed with strange races. Therefore, there was no need to worry that the heavenly tribulation wouldn't hit anyone. The scene was truly too lively. A majestic, muscular, and huge black bear wielding a huge sawtooth saber took the lead, roaring and leaping forward crazily with white foam coming out of his mouth. That was called lively, that was called cheerful. Furthermore, he was actually leading a large number of lightning bolts right behind him. They were also crazily striking down from the sky as if they were free of charge. Such a shocking scene could only be roughly described as a volley of rocket launchers in modern warfare. It was an indiscriminate carpet attack, landing row after row of lightning bolts on the ground. Miserable screams shook the heavens, and people were thrown off their horses. Countless non-human beings were turned into charcoal by this man-made disaster, and even more non-human beings were unwittingly turned into flying people, flying freely in the sky without any consciousness. Eagle King, who was following behind to provide support, was completely dumbfounded. After staring blankly for a long time, Eagle King tilted his head and spat out a mouthful of saliva, muttering in shock, "Fuck. This works too? Fuck me, could it be that this stupid bear really has stupid luck? Do I still need to worry about him?" The Bear King, who had unexpectedly broken through to the Saint Venerable realm, was still full of energy despite being blocked by powerful enemies. He was still as crazy as ever, courageously advancing forward. No one could stop him, even if it was just a step or half a step, but after such a long period of exhaustion, even though his spirit was still high, his stamina was gradually unable to keep up. Although a Saint Venerable's regenerative ability was shocking, he was still a human, and as long as he was a human, he would still have his limits. Especially for someone like Bear Mountain who had just entered the Saint Venerable realm, he did not know how to be stingy and only focused on killing. Naturally, he began to feel that his stamina could not keep up, and he could not catch his breath. At this moment, Bear King was still trapped within the 100,000-strong army. Under Bear Mountain's ferocious attacks, the strange races had undoubtedly suffered great losses. This was obvious and undeniable. The entire formation of the outsiders had been destroyed by him, and it could be said that they were in complete disarray. There were even many deserters who had scattered in all directions, and there were no less than a few thousand who had been burnt to ashes by the heavenly lightning. Not to mention the others, just the frenzy blade enduring Earths, who were currently the strongest among the strange races, and those who had died directly under Bear Mountain's hands or had suffered because of him, had already exceeded 100 people. Thus, although Bear Mountain was a little tired, he was not in any danger. The frenzy blade enduring Earths that had surrounded him previously had already disappeared. No one was an idiot, and those frenzy blade enduring Earths were even less so. What a joke! Who would be willing to take the risk of being implicated by the heavenly tribulation just to attack a Saint Venerable whose strength was far beyond their own? That was not bravery at all. That was directly sending their lives to their deaths, or even helping the enemy. Those who had died due to the lightning tribulation earlier, weren't they all helping Bear King in his tribulation? Thus, although Bear Mountain's speed was slightly slower than before, the moment the enemy saw him, they would immediately cry out and scatter in all directions. The attacks from the enemies had stopped, but the might of the lightning tribulation had already reached its most intense moment. It had actually sent out a total of 81 bolts of lightning in one go. Up until this point, Bear Mountain still could not understand what was going on. Just as he was running with his eyes wide open, searching for the enemy's gathering point, a bolt of lightning accurately exploded above his head. An unprecedented pain almost caused Bear King to fall on his butt. Bear Mountain was enraged. "Fuck. You can't beat this daddy in a fight, and you dare to launch a sneak attack. Just because this daddy slowed down a little, you think this daddy is a sick cat." Bear Mountain's hair stood up in anger, and he gathered all his remaining courage, brandishing his huge blade once more as he charged into the dense formation of the strange races while cursing crazily. Behind him, the heavenly tribulation followed him like a shadow. When the strange races in front of him saw this fiend leading the heavenly tribulation over again, they were so scared that they almost peed their pants. If this was still a sick cat, the most terrifying existence in this world would probably have to change its name to a sick cat. Fuck, we're people who fought in wars our entire lives, but we've never seen a battle like this before. Just this one person, even if he's a Saint Venerable, we're not afraid. We have so many people, even if we only use cannon fodder, we can still pile him to death. But the heavenly tribulation behind him is not a joke. No matter how many people there are, it won't be enough. Thus, Bear King roared loudly, and in the blink of an eye, he had already run another 200 zhang. Behind him, there was a large patch of scorched earth, and the dense heavenly tribulation was truly like a rocket. With such a terrifying frequency, there was actually not a single rock larger than a fist on the ground, but at this time, the final explosion of the heavenly tribulation, which was also the strongest, the widest area, and the most destructive, also struck down. Chapter 1148. Today's Third Watch. Make Up for the Debt, Chapter 9. Within a radius of 1,000 zhang, it was a true attack that covered a large area. Perhaps luck would not follow a person forever. Coincidentally or not, Bear King had actually sunk into a state of near exhaustion at this time. Hong! An unprecedented heaven-shaking explosion rang out. The remaining tens of thousands of people on the ground all jumped up in unison, their feet lifting 3 chi off the ground. Within a radius of 100 zhang, all living beings, regardless of friend or foe, were all turned into ashes. The fragrance of roasted meat spread out to a distance of 30 li. The Bear King roared into the sky and was struck by a bolt of lightning. His entire body was covered in lightning, and he convulsed for a while. Then, with a loud roar, he spat out a mouthful of blood from his throat. As he spat out this mouthful of blood, Bear King's majestic body finally toppled over like a mountain of gold and jade. Right in the center. "Fourth brother!" Eagle King cried out, his voice sounding like he was weeping blood. With a flap of his wings, he shot towards that direction with all his might. The 6 frenzy blade enduring earths not far from Bear King's position had also noticed this and were overjoyed. Without waiting for the power of the heavenly tribulation to dissipate, they raised their blades and charged towards Bear Mountain. With their strength, they naturally knew that they could not allow this Bear King to recover from this attack. If he recovered, then this black bear would be a true saint venerable existence. At that time, the few of them remaining would really be in for a hard time. While he was still recovering from the power of the heavenly tribulation, and his body was still weak, they had to quickly kill him. Blade light flashed. A distance of 100 zhang was merely the blink of an eye for the frenzy blade enduring earths. Almost at the same time, 6 snow-white blades slashed down on the Bear King's majestic body that was lying on the ground. Everyone's eyes were filled with endless joy. Just this one person in front of them had killed at least 150 frenzy blade enduring earths, as well as close to 10,000 strange races elites in just an hour's time. Killing him now was already letting him off too lightly. "Fourth brother!" The Eagle King let out a long cry. With a face full of tears, he resolutely pounced forward at lightning speed. Just as the blades of the 6 frenzy blade enduring earths were about to land on Bear Mountain's body, the Eagle King let out a shrill cry and transformed into a gigantic black eagle, pouncing onto Bear Mountain's body. Without the slightest hesitation, puff puff, 6 blades landed on Eagle King's body at the same time. In an instant, blood splattered and iron feathers fluttered in the air. 6 blades, a total of 6 holy emperors attacked at the same time, and all of them accurately hit their targets. The Eagle King's body was almost chopped into 6 pieces. Fortunately, his body was huge. Out of the 6 blades, 4 of them landed on his iron wings. However, there were still 2 that pierced into his body. The Eagle King let out a piercing howl. Then he jumped up abruptly. His pair of iron wings had already been completely broken into several pieces. His body had also been pierced by the blades. 4 bloody holes appeared on his front and back, and fresh blood gushed out like a fountain. This kind of injury was a fatal one. Furthermore, the Eagle King had already taken the heaven reversal pill. At this moment, even if Jun Moxie or the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters came personally, and infused him with the purest Xian Qi and the most precious elixirs in the world, they would not be able to save the Eagle King's life. But the Eagle King still jumped up. It was still filled with endless determination and heroism. Using his steel-like body, he blocked wave after wave of attacks for his sworn brother who was lying unconscious on the ground. Fourth brother. Quickly get up. Quickly wake up. The Eagle King's voice sounded like he was crying, but also like he was praying. His eyes were filled with tears of blood. His iron wings had already been broken into many pieces, and they hung limply on his body. But when he saw the other strange races sneak an attack on Bear Mountain, he actually tore off a piece of his own wing and used it as a hidden weapon. Mixed with blood, he threw it out to block the enemy's attack. A total of 7 strange races level 9 ninjas were cut in half by the iron wings he threw out. Screaming in pain, they were cut in half at the waist in front of Bear Mountain. The huge blades in their hands slashed down, just a few millimeters away from stabbing into Bear Mountain's body. They almost grazed Bear Mountain's skin and stabbed deep into the ground. The long blades shone brightly. Fourth brother, wake up. The Eagle King cried out hoarsely, trying his best to block the attacks of the 6 frenzy blade enduring earths. Flashes of light from the blades landed on his body, tearing apart pieces of flesh and blood. Fourth brother, hurry up and get up. The Eagle King could barely make a sound at this point. His throat was already filled with blood, and the moment he loosened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood, it would be the moment his soul would shatter. He did not dare to spit out this mouthful of blood. He could not die yet. His brother was still lying on the ground. In his heart, he was still screaming crazily, Fourth brother, wake up. I can't hold on much longer. Self-destruct. I don't dare to self-destruct. I can't self-destruct. Fourth brother is just behind me. If I self-destruct, I won't know what will happen next. I won't be able to do anything anymore. Who will protect my brother then? Another slash landed on the Eagle King's shoulder, and the Eagle King raised his head to the sky in pain, letting out a low roar. Then he stretched out his neck and stabbed his sharp beak into the chest of the strange race enduring earths, piercing through both their bodies at the same time. Then he pulled it out, ignoring the fact that his body had already been stabbed 3 more times, and with another twist of his head, the sharp beak flew towards another frenzy blade enduring earths. His arms were broken, his wings were broken. All that was left was this last and most primitive method of attack. However, his body remained motionless from beginning to end. He was like a mountain that had existed since the beginning of time, using his sturdy body to closely guard the motionless big bear. He was determined not to let anyone attack his brother who was currently in a deep sleep. In truth, the Eagle King was not the only one who had gone crazy. The remaining 5 frenzy blade enduring earths were also in a frenzy. This was equivalent to 5 level 3 holy emperors joining hands, but they still could not break through the Eagle King who had clearly been heavily injured to the point that he should have died 10,000 times. But they still could not kill him? The sabers rained down like a torrential downpour. The Eagle King trembled, attacked, leaped, spasmed. He could no longer feel the slightest bit of pain on his body. His eyes were blurry, and the eagle eyes that were once as sharp as blades could no longer see the appearance of the enemy clearly. But his heart was still screaming anxiously, Fourth brother, wake up. Fourth brother, poo-pew-pew-big. Finally, 5 blades pierced into the vital points of the Eagle King's body from different directions. 2 blades pierced through his head. 2 blades pierced through his heart. 1 blade pierced through his dantian, through his back. The Eagle King's body shook. Suddenly he froze like a statue. His body, from a state of rapid jumping, suddenly turned into a state of deathly stillness. The eagle eyes that were once shining with a golden light rolled over unconsciously, looking at the 2 blades in his head, and then at the long blade in his heart. The Eagle King suddenly cried out in grief and indignation. 2 streams of tears, along with the blood that had been suppressed in his throat for a long time, flowed out together. The Eagle King was crying with endless despair in his heart. He was not afraid of death. But he was not crying for himself. Because just the injuries on his body right now could kill him at least a dozen times. Or even a dozen times. Death was not scary. It was not worth crying. But he was still crying, all because his brother finally had no one to protect him. The only reason he was still struggling was to protect his brother's last bit of faith, his last bit of fighting spirit. If I go, who will protect you? My fourth brother? He suddenly used the last bit of his strength, shouting hoarsely, I cannot die, I still cannot die, if I die, what will happen to fourth brother? Fourth brother, quickly wake up, stop playing around, quickly wake up, I can't hold on any longer. The Eagle King's consciousness gradually blurred, his words also becoming more and more incoherent. From shouting hoarsely to mumbling, he even hoped that the Bear King was not really unconscious, and was just joking with him. 5 long blades, one after another, were pulled out from the Eagle King's body, still dripping with the boiling hot blood of a man. The Eagle King's body spasmed and swayed, but he still stood firm and did not fall. His 2 eyes, still filled with endless hatred, filled with endless worry, stared fiercely in front of him, not moving at all. At this moment, his body still had the aura of a king who could massacre the world, a domineering aura. Although his pair of iron wings were no longer there, although his entire body, from top to bottom, was full of injuries, with not a single part of him left intact, although 70 to 80% of the bones in his body had been broken, but he still maintained his standing posture, still in his battle stance. In the eyes of everyone, he was still the Eagle King that soared through the 9 heavens, the strongest king in the sky, the absolute overlord of aerial battles, even though at this moment he was on the ground. Po! The Eagle King's body trembled, and with a low roar, he suddenly took another step forward. His eyes stared fixedly at the 5 people in front of him, cruel and ruthless. This was the final radiance of his life, and also the final warning. As though it was warning the enemies in front of him, never. You can never hurt my brother. The 5 frenzy blade enduring earths in front of him suddenly felt a sense of fear from the depths of their souls. The 5 experts all took a step back at the same time. Po! The Eagle King resolutely took another step forward. His eyes were still cruel, and his battle intent was still limitless. The ruthlessness in his body was still surging out. The 5 strange races all took another step back at the same time. One of the legs of one of them were already trembling uncontrollably. To be able to become the frenzy blade enduring earths, they had naturally experienced tens of thousands of battles, but they had never seen such a person before. Such a Xian beast. Facing such a tragic situation, they actually did not dare to take a step forward, cowering in front of the limitless battle intent of the Eagle King. In order to protect their brothers, an unwavering battle intent. Even though they knew that as long as they took a step forward, with just a finger, they would be able to push down the Eagle King in front of them, so that he would never be able to stand up again for the rest of his life. But for some reason, the 5 of them, the 5 first-class experts, did not dare to take a step forward. Oh! The mouthful of blood that had been stored in the Eagle King's throat finally gushed out like a fountain, soaking the ground beneath his feet. After spitting out the blood, the Eagle King finally took another step forward. The 3rd step. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.